Welcome back, my friends. Tonight, I invite you to step through the swinging doors of history into the heart of Cody, Wyoming. Here, nestled against the backdrop of the wild frontier, stands a place that refuses to surrender its past. Buffalo Bill's Irma Hotel and Restaurant, built in 1902 by the legendary showman himself, William Buffalo Bill Cody, is not only a monument to the Old West, but also a gathering place for restless spirits who never truly checked out. Some say the echoes of laughter and gunfire still cling to the ornate wooden walls. Others swear that the halls echo with the voices of long-departed guests, trapped between this world and the next. From spectral cowboys to ghostly children, from phantom footsteps to rooms that breathe with unseen energies, the Irma is a crossroads where time folds in on itself. So settle in, turn down the lights, and prepare yourself for the 25 most haunting of Buffalo Bill's Irma Hotel and Restaurant. Each tale will guide you deeper into the shadows of the Irma, where history and horror intertwine. Buffalo Bill Cody remains one of the most legendary figures of the American West, a showman, scout, and larger-than-life personality who helped shape the mythology of frontier life. His name is forever tied to tales of the Wild West, and his legacy still lingers in the stories told about him. But for those who visit his cherished Irma Hotel, built in Cody, Wyoming, there is a stronger belief that Buffalo Bill himself never truly left. Guests and staff whisper of a tall, broad-shouldered man with a sweeping mustache, dressed in period attire, wandering the halls long after closing time. They say his presence is felt as strongly as if he had only just walked out of a meeting or returned from a long ride across the plains. Some even report that this ghostly figure will tip his hat in silent acknowledgement before fading away into nothingness, leaving behind only the echoes of spurred boots on wooden floors. The Irma Hotel, built in 1902, was not just another business venture for Buffalo Bill. It was a passion project, a gift to his daughter Irma, for whom the hotel was named. Designed as a grand showpiece for the bustling town of Cody, it featured elegant fixtures, fine dining, and a carved cherry wood bar said to have been gifted by Queen Victoria. It was meant to be a place where travelers and locals could gather, enjoying the comfort and refinement of a man who had traveled the world but never forgot his roots. It was also a place where Buffalo Bill himself spent countless evenings entertaining, meeting friends, and reliving his glory days. Those who claim to see him today believe he returns not out of unrest, but out of love for the place he built and the legacy it represents. Stories of Buffalo Bill's ghost are remarkably consistent. Hotel workers have reported locking up for the night, only to hear footsteps echoing down the corridors. Expecting to find a lingering guest, they follow the sounds, only to discover empty halls. Yet in those moments, the air feels different, charged, almost as if someone unseen is watching. One staff member recalled closing the dining room late one evening, when she spotted a man standing near the ornate bar. He was tall and broad, his presence commanding, and his clothes were unmistakably from another century. Startled, she looked away for only a second, and when her gaze returned, the man was gone. She later described him in detail, her words matching old photographs of Buffalo Bill himself. Guests, too, have their own encounters. Some awaken in the middle of the night to find the silhouette of a man standing at the foot of their bed, his hat tipped low over his mustache, as though he is quietly keeping watch. Others say they have seen him pacing the hallways, as if inspecting his beloved establishment. There are those who report hearing the soft jingle of spurs or the faint creak of leather, sounds that vanish the moment one tries to follow them. A few have even claimed that he is courteous in death, just as he was in life, tipping his hat before dissolving into the shadows of the Irma Hotel. Skeptics often suggest these encounters are simply the product of imagination, fueled by the hotel's history and Buffalo Bill's enduring legend. Yet the sheer number of stories told across decades makes it difficult to dismiss. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Irma Hotel have recorded unexplained cold spots, electronic disturbances, and even strange voices that seem to answer direct questions. In one instance, when asked who was present in the room, A recording device captured a faint but distinct voice saying, "Bill." For many who revere his memory, the thought of Buffalo Bill's ghost lingering at the Irma is not frightening but comforting. He was a man who loved to entertain, to tell stories, and to keep the spirit of the West alive. Perhaps, in some way, he continues to do so, appearing now and again to remind people of who he was and the life he lived. His apparition is not described as threatening, but as dignified, carrying the same charisma that made him a star in life. There is also a poetic quality to the idea of Buffalo Bill's spirit roaming his hotel. After all, his life was spent building legends through his Wild West shows, his public persona, and his dedication to preserving the frontier experience in memory and performance. In death, it seems fitting that he should become part of a legend himself, a ghostly figure, ensuring that people never forget the man who once captivated the world. Those who visit the Irma Hotel often feel that they are stepping back in time. The historic furnishings, the ornate bar, and the very atmosphere of the place seem to carry echoes of the early 1900s. Against this backdrop, it is easy to imagine Buffalo Bill striding through the halls, his boots clicking on the wood, his broad shoulders filling the doorway, his mustache curling in that familiar style. The idea that his ghost is still present only deepens the sense that the past lives on here, not just in memory but in presence. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the stories of Buffalo Bill at the Irma Hotel continue to draw curiosity. Travelers arrive not only to enjoy the food and the history, but to walk the same halls where a legend once walked, and perhaps still does. Some leave with stories of their own, encounters they cannot explain, moments when the veil between past and present seemed too thin. For them, the ghost of Buffalo Bill is not just a tale, it is a real experience, one that lingers long after they've checked out. In the end, the legend of Buffalo Bill Cody extends far beyond his lifetime. His name is carved into the story of the American frontier. His shows brought the spirit of the Wild West to audiences worldwide, and his hotel stands as a living reminder of his ambition and legacy. If his ghost truly does pace the halls of the Irma, it is only fitting. For a man who lived larger than life, perhaps even death was not enough to silence his presence. Instead, he remains, tipping his hat to those who cross his path, ensuring that Buffalo Bill Cody's scout, showman, and legend will never be forgotten. The Lady in White is one of the most enduring and chilling legends whispered within the old hotel's walls. Guests who stay on the second floor often report seeing her, a mysterious woman in a flowing white gown who drifts silently through the dim hallways. She is described as pale and sorrowful, her eyes carrying a deep sadness that weighs heavily on all who encounter her. Unlike other ghostly figures that may vanish quickly, she is said to linger, moving gracefully, almost as if tethered to something unseen. Her presence is not loud or violent, but heavy with a quiet grief that unsettles even the most skeptical visitors. Those who have seen her say she glides rather than walks, her feet never quite touching the ground. Her gown shimmers faintly in the low light, an ethereal whiteness against the shadowed corridors. Guests describe the sudden chill that washes over them when she passes. A temperature drop so stark it feels as though the air itself has frozen. Sometimes, she simply appears at the end of a hallway, her head bowed, her hair cascading over her shoulders. At other times, she is glimpsed standing at a doorway, as though waiting for someone who never arrives. The origin of the Lady in White remains a mystery, though countless theories have been whispered over the years. Some believe she was once a guest who suffered a tragic fate within the hotel's walls. Perhaps she was a young bride who never returned from her honeymoon, her life cut short in an accident that history forgot. Others suggest she may have been a woman who fell ill while traveling, her final days spent in the quiet solitude of her room. There are even rumors of heartbreak, a love affair gone wrong, leaving her spirit to wander endlessly in mourning. The true story of her death may never be known, but the sorrow that clings to her is unmistakable. One guest recounted waking in the middle of the night to find the Lady in White standing at the foot of his bed. She did not speak or move, but stared at him with mournful eyes, her expression filled with longing. The man described being unable to move, frozen by both fear and fascination. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly faded into the air, leaving behind the faint scent of old perfume. Others have told of waking to hear soft sobbing in the hallway, only to open their doors and find her drifting past, her gown whispering against the floor, though it makes no sound. Hotel staff, too, have their share of stories. One housekeeper claimed that while cleaning a room on the second floor, she felt a sudden presence behind her. Turning quickly, she caught sight of a figure in white slipping through the wall, as if the structure itself held no barrier. Another staff member spoke of seeing the lady in white in a hallway mirror, her reflection perfectly clear, even though the hall itself was empty when he turned. Over the decades, enough sightings have been recorded that even the most practical employees accept her as part of the hotel's nightly routine. Paranormal investigators who have studied the hotel often focus their efforts on the second floor, drawn by the sheer number of reports. Cold spots are frequently measured near the areas where the lady in white has been seen, and recording devices sometimes capture faint sobs or whispers when no one else is present. One recording even picked up what sounded like a woman softly repeating the word "why" over and over, as though searching for an answer to her eternal sorrow. Unlike some haunted legends, the lady in white does not appear to wish harm upon those who encounter her. Her presence is more sorrowful than malevolent, a haunting reminder of a life that ended too soon. Guests who see her often speak not of fear, but of an overwhelming sadness that lingers long after she disappears. It is as though she carries her grief so powerfully that those who cross her path cannot help but feel it themselves. There is a strange beauty to her story, as if the lady in white has become more than just a ghostly apparition. She is a symbol of the past that cannot be forgotten, a reminder that every grand building holds secrets and sorrows within its walls. Her image, drifting silently through the halls, connects today's guests with those who lived and died long ago. Some visitors leave, believing they have simply witnessed a trick of the imagination, while others are convinced they have encountered something far beyond explanation. What draws her spirit to remain is still unknown. Some say she waits for the loved one she lost, pacing the hallways endlessly in hopes of reunion. Others believe she lingers because her story was never told, her tragedy swallowed by time, leaving her restless and searching for recognition. Perhaps the lady in white continues to haunt the second floor, simply because the sorrow of her final moments bound her there forever. Regardless of the reason, her presence has become an inseparable part of the hotel's identity. Guests ask about her, staff tell her story, and investigators return, hoping to catch a glimpse. The lady in white has become more than a legend. She is an eternal resident, silent and sorrowful, yet unforgettable. For those who walk the second floor at night, the air feels charged, as though every shadow could hide her form. The creak of a floorboard, the sudden chill of air, the glimpse of white at the edge of vision are enough to raise the hairs on the back of the neck. And for the unlucky few who see her face to face, the memory never fades. They carry with them the image of a woman lost in grief, drifting through time, forever bound to the place where her story ended. In the quiet hours of the night, when the hallways are empty and the world outside is still, the lady in white makes her presence known. She glides silently, mournful eyes searching, her sorrow pressing against the hearts of those who see her. She does not speak, she does not threaten, but she endures. Her story may be lost, but her presence ensures she will never be forgotten. Inside the hotel lounge, an old piano sits in the corner, its polished surface reflecting the soft glow of antique lamps. By day, it remains silent, a relic of a bygone era, admired for its craftsmanship but left untouched. But as night falls, something strange and inexplicable occurs. Guests and staff alike have reported that the piano sometimes plays on its own. Notes rise and fall in hauntingly familiar melodies, echoing through the lounge in a way that feels both intimate and otherworldly. The sound is never harsh or jarring. Instead, it drifts like a whisper of the past, a soft reminder of celebrations and music that once filled the room. The phenomenon is most often noticed late at night, when the lounge is empty or nearly so. Guests passing by report hearing the gentle strains of a waltz, a slow ballad, or a lively ragtime tune, though no one is seated at the piano bench. Sometimes the music begins faintly, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning or the faint footsteps in the corridor. Other times, it swells, filling the room with melodies so vivid that listeners feel as though a skilled pianist is performing just for them. Staff who arrive early in the morning to tidy the lounge often remark on the lingering echoes, a soft resonance that seems to hang in the air long after the piano has fallen silent. One guest recalled staying late in the lounge, reading a book beside a flickering lamp. Around midnight, the first notes of a piano piece began, gentle and precise. Startled, the guest glanced toward the instrument, only to see it empty. The music continued, each chord deliberate, each melody flowing naturally, as though a pianist were seated invisible at the keys. The guest described a sense of being transported back in time, imagining couples waltzing across the polished floor, laughter mingling with music, the atmosphere alive with celebration. When the piece ended, the final note lingered in the air like a sigh, leaving the room quiet once more. Staff members have long accepted the piano's mysterious habit, though few discuss it openly. Housekeepers entering the lounge late at night have reported glimpsing a faint shimmer of movement near the instrument, a subtle shadow that vanishes when approached. Bartenders and night clerks describe hearing music rise from the corner, even when no guests are present, sometimes coinciding with a sudden chill or the soft creak of floorboards elsewhere in the hotel. The piano seems attuned to the rhythm of the building itself, responding to the quiet hours when the energy of past events is strongest. The piano's melodies are rarely random. Visitors note that the tunes often reflect popular music from decades past, the same songs that would have been played during grand gatherings in the hotel's early years. A lively jazz number from the 1920s, a sentimental ballad from the 1940s, or the gentle strains of a waltz from the Victorian era. Each piece carries with it the sense of a living memory, a fragment of life preserved in the piano's haunting notes. Some speculate that the instrument is a conduit for echoes of the past, replaying celebrations, dances, and quiet evenings for anyone present to witness. Paranormal investigators who have studied the phenomenon describe a variety of unusual occurrences. Audio recordings capture the piano's music with startling clarity, yet playback sometimes reveals irregularities, notes missing or duplicated, faint whispers interwoven with the melody, or the subtle sound of a breath above the keys. Thermal imaging occasionally shows a faint outline near the piano, indistinct and shifting, while electromagnetic readings fluctuate unpredictably during performances. These anomalies suggest that the piano may be more than a musical instrument, a vessel for residual energy or a conscious presence capable of creating sound without physical touch. Guests who hear the piano often report strong emotional responses. Some feel nostalgic, transported to another time, swept up in the joy and melancholy of a bygone era. Others experience unease, the knowledge that the music is beautiful yet impossible to explain, leaving a shiver in its wake. Children have been known to stop and listen in wonder, captivated by the gentle resonance, while couples sometimes pause mid-conversation, entranced by the invisible performance. The piano is particularly active during quiet nights when few are around to witness its melodies. In those hours, the lounge becomes a bridge between the past and present. The music drifts across the polished floor, brushing against the walls and ceiling, filling the room with life that no living person provides. The notes carry a presence that is neither threatening nor malevolent, but undeniably aware, deliberate, and intimate. And so, in the quiet darkness of the hotel lounge, the piano continues its nightly ritual. Guests passing through may hear the first tentative notes, soft as a whisper, or the full flourish of a melody that seems to dance across the room. They may glance toward the instrument, hoping to see the pianist, only to find an empty bench. Yet the music persists, haunting, beautiful, and inexplicable. It lingers in memory and in the air, a reminder that some echoes of the past are so strong they cannot be silenced. The piano plays on, carrying the whispers of bygone celebrations and the invisible hands that bring them to life each night. Late at night, in the dimly lit corners of the hotel's bar and lounge. An unusual scent often drifts through the air-rich, pungent cigar smoke, carrying the faint aroma of leather, wood, and the open plains. The smell is so distinct that guests immediately recognize it, despite the fact that smoking has long been strictly prohibited inside the hotel. Many who encounter it initially assume another guest has broken the rules, only to look around and find no one present. The cigar smoke seems to have a life of its own, lingering in the corners and curling in the air, as though someone was seated there, puffing leisurely, entirely unseen. This phenomenon has come to be known as the presence of the smoking cowboy. The earliest accounts trace back decades, when the hotel's bar was a gathering place for cowboys, ranchers, and travelers who frequented the region. Tales from that era speak of a rugged man with a weathered face, a wide-brimmed hat, and a calm, quiet demeanor, who would sit in the shadowed corner of the bar, puffing on a cigar as he listened to the stories of others. Guests who have stayed in the hotel for long periods insist that the lingering presence of this man remains, even after his passing, manifesting through the unmistakable aroma of smoke and fleeting glimpses of a lone figure. Witnesses describe the cowboy as tall and broad-shouldered, clad in leather boots, worn denim, and a coat that seems slightly too large for him, as if it carries decades of dust and sun. Some guests swear they have seen the faint glow of the tip of a cigar moving slowly through the darkness, the smoke curling upward in a lazy spiral. Others describe the figure seated on a bar stool, hat tipped low, silently observing the room while exhaling thin wisps of smoke. No one reports seeing him speak, but there is a sense of quiet presence, of someone absorbing the room without intrusion, like a guardian of old stories. The cowboy's appearances are often accompanied by subtle, eerie phenomena. Chairs near the bar seem to creak slightly, as if settling under weight that is not there. Glasses occasionally tremble in place, and the faint warmth of a breath seems to brush past those standing nearby. Patrons describe a mixture of comfort and unease. The scent of cigar smoke evokes the familiarity of old saloons and dusty roads. Yet the knowledge that no one is physically present makes the experience uncanny. Many guests report a deep, almost instinctive respect for the figure, refraining from approaching or attempting to interact with him. One particularly vivid account comes from a guest who arrived late after a long day of travel. As he settled onto a bar stool, he noticed the aroma of cigar smoke wafting from the corner of the room. He looked over and saw the outline of a man leaning back, hat tilted, a faint glow marking the tip of a cigar. The guest froze, uncertain whether to speak or move. Moments later, when he dared to glance again, the figure was gone. The smoke lingered for a few more minutes, curling in the air like a ghostly signature, before dissipating entirely. The guest later remarked that he felt he had been in the presence of someone who had been watching over the hotel for decades, quietly ensuring that the stories of the past were not forgotten. Staff members are well aware of the cowboy's presence, though they rarely discuss it with guests. Bartenders recount nights when patrons complained about the smell of smoke, despite no one smoking. Housekeepers have entered rooms and lounges where the scent is strongest, finding nothing out of place except for a faint outline of movement captured in the corner of their vision. Some employees describe a subtle chill, or the sudden sound of a chair creaking as though someone had shifted position, only to find the space empty. These occurrences have become a quiet, accepted part of the hotel's character, a reminder that some histories linger beyond the physical. Paranormal investigators who have examined the phenomenon suggest that the cowboy may be a residual spirit, an echo of a man who spent countless nights in the hotel's bar during his lifetime. They note the precision of the manifestations. The smoke is always aromatic and distinct, the glow of the cigar faint but consistent, and the figure itself never behaves aggressively or intrusively. Some theorists argue that the cowboy is an intelligent presence, aware of those around him, choosing exactly when to reveal himself through scent, shadow, and fleeting glimpses. Thermal imaging and night vision cameras occasionally pick up heat signatures or faint outlines, but never a full, solid figure, further cementing the notion of a spirit anchored to the hotel. Guests often report strong emotional reactions to encountering the cowboy. Many feel a connection to a time long past, imagining dusty roads, open prairies, and saloons where stories were traded over whiskey and cigars. Others experience a sense of unease, the knowledge that a presence exists just beyond their perception, observing quietly, never interacting directly. Children have been known to peer into the corners, curious yet cautious, while couples may pause mid-conversation, drawn by the subtle aroma and the hint of a figure leaning against the bar. The cowboy's presence is most noticeable late at night, during the quiet hours when few guests remain. The bar and lounge become almost cinematic in atmosphere, the faint glow of the cigar and the drifting smoke transforming the room into a scene from another century. The effect is both haunting and oddly comforting, a reminder that some spirits linger not out of malice, but out of attachment, a desire to remain part of the world they loved. And so, on nights when the hotel grows still and the lamps cast long shadows across the polished floor, the scent of cigar smoke may rise once again from a dark corner. Patrons may see the faint glow of a tip, the outline of a hat, and a figure seated quietly, observing without words. The smoking cowboy, rugged and patient, continues to inhabit the hotel's corners, a living memory of a time long past, sharing his presence with those who notice, and vanishing as quietly as he appears, leaving only the lingering aroma and the weight of history behind. The vanishing bartender has become one of the hotel's most enduring mysteries. A ghostly figure whose presence has unsettled countless guests and staff over the years. Unlike other apparitions that drift silently through hallways or linger in the shadows, this spirit seems bound to a specific purpose, serving behind the bar, as though continuing an eternal shift that never truly ended. Those who have encountered him describe a man dressed neatly in suspenders and abode sleeves, rolled up as if ready for a long night of work. He appears solid, real, and approachable, until the moment he suddenly vanishes, leaving behind nothing but stunned silence and unanswered questions. Stories of the vanishing bartender often follow a similar pattern. A guest walks up to the bar, ready to order a drink. Behind the counter stands a man who looks every bit the part of a traditional bartender, polite and attentive. Sometimes he is seen polishing glasses with a cloth, other times arranging bottles or wiping down the counter. He seems so real, so convincingly alive, that guests never suspect anything unusual. They speak to him, perhaps even begin their order, only for the figure to disappear in an instant, fading into thin air before their very eyes. The bar is left empty, as though no one had been there at all. One guest recalled approaching the bar late at night after returning from an event. The bartender was there, leaning against the counter with a small smile, as though ready to take his order. The man began to ask for a drink, but before he could finish the sentence, the bartender dissolved like smoke, leaving nothing but the glint of bottles on the shelves behind him. The guest admitted he stood frozen in disbelief for several minutes, certain he had not imagined the encounter. The detail of the man's clothing, the suspenders, the body, the crisp shirt remained etched in his memory. Another story tells of a group of friends who wandered into the lounge one evening, hoping for a nightcap. They saw the bartender bustling behind the counter, setting out glasses and adjusting bottles. Relieved to find service still available, they hurried forward, only to watch the man fade into nothingness before their eyes. All three swore they had seen the same thing, and described the bartender identically. Their voices shook as they told the staff the next morning, still unsettled by the experience. The origins of the vanishing bartender remain shrouded in speculation. Some believe he was once a real bartender who worked at the hotel in its earliest days. A man dedicated to his job who never left his post, even in death. Perhaps he died unexpectedly, his spirit bound to the bar where he spent so much of his life. Others suggest he may have been a tragic figure, someone who poured drinks for years, but carried burdens that tied him to the establishment. There are even whispers that he may not be a former employee at all, but a residual spiritan echo of the countless bartenders who have worked there. Their movements and routines etched into the very walls of the lounge. Employees of the hotel have their own tales of the vanishing bartender. Some have come into the lounge early in the morning to find glasses neatly lined up on the counter, though they had not been placed there the night before. Others claim to have seen the figure themselves, moving briskly behind the bar before fading away. One staff member confessed that while restocking shelves one afternoon, she caught sight of a man in suspenders reflected in the mirror behind the bar. When she turned, there was no one there, though the reflection had been clear and undeniable. Paranormal investigators who have visited the hotel often focus their equipment on the lounge, eager to capture evidence of the elusive spirit. Some recordings have picked up faint clinks of glass or the sound of liquid being poured when no one is present. One team even claimed to catch a faint voice on audio playback, answering a question with the single word, "drink." Yet despite the efforts, no one has ever managed to capture clear footage of the bartender himself, making his appearances all the more mysterious. What sets the vanishing bartender apart from other apparitions is how convincingly human he appears. Unlike hazy figures or fleeting shadows, witnesses insist he looks solid and real, indistinguishable from a living person until the moment he disappears. The realism of his presence makes the encounters deeply unsettling, as guests often don't realize what they've seen until it's too late. They approach with the expectation of service, only to be met with vanishing air. The suddenness of the disappearance leaves many shaken, unsure of whether to trust their senses. For some, the vanishing bartender is more than just a ghost story. He is a reminder of the countless lives woven into the fabric of the hotel, the people who worked tirelessly within its walls and whose dedication left an imprint too strong to fade. His continued presence behind the bar suggests a devotion to his craft, a refusal to leave unfinished a job he once took pride in. Others interpret his appearances as a sign of loneliness, a spirit bound to routine, endlessly waiting for customers who can never truly be served. Guests who have encountered him rarely forget the experience. The image of a man so clearly present, only to vanish in an instant, stays with them long after they leave. Some admit they feel a strange comfort in his presence, as though the hotel is still being looked after by those who came before. Others find the experience deeply unsettling, a reminder that the veil between the living and the dead is far thinner than they imagined. The vanishing bartender has become an inseparable part of the hotel's legend, his story shared among visitors who come hoping for a glimpse of the supernatural. Whether he is a restless spirit, a memory etched in time, or something else entirely, his presence continues to intrigue and mystify. Night after night, guests walk into the lounge, and some leave with a story they can never quite explain. The bar may be empty, the counter untouched, but in their minds, the man in suspenders and a body still stands there, tending his eternal shift. Room 16 has earned a reputation as the most notorious spot in the hotel, a place where even the bravest guests think twice before spending the night. On the surface, the room appears perfectly ordinary, with its neatly made bed, polished furniture, and quiet atmosphere. Yet those who have stayed there tell a very different story of unseen hands, disembodied voices, and a chilling apparition that makes itself known in the dead of night. Over the years, countless accounts have built Room 16 into a legend, a room where the boundary between the living and the dead feels perilously thin. The most common reports from guests involve the unsettling sensation of being touched while they sleep. Many describe drifting into slumber, only to awaken with a distinct feeling that someone is sitting on the edge of the mattress, the bed sinking beneath an invisible weight. Others claim they feel hands brushing against their arms, shoulders, or even their faces, as though someone is trying to rouse them from sleep. The touches are never violent but are described as deliberate, persistent, and impossible to dismiss as dreams. Several guests have checked out early, unwilling to endure another night of such disturbances. Then there are the phantom voices. Guests have heard whispers drifting through the room when no one else is present. Sometimes the words are indistinct, a hushed murmur like the sound of a distant conversation. Other times, the voices are sharper, clearer, as though directed toward the living occupant of the room. One guest recalled being awakened by the sound of a man's voice calling her name softly in the darkness. Startled, she switched on the lamp, only to find the room empty. Another claimed to have heard what sounded like an argument between two unseen people, their voices low and tense, fading away as suddenly as they had begun. But the most chilling encounters involve the apparition that seems to claim room 16 as its own. Dozens of witnesses have reported seeing the figure of a man sitting at the edge of the bed. He is usually described as tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in clothing from another era. His face is often shadowed, making it difficult to distinguish his features, but his presence is unmistakable. Some say he sits silently, staring at the floor as though lost in thought. Others insist he turns his head toward them, his gaze heavy and unsettling, before fading into nothingness. One guest, a businessman passing through town, told of waking in the middle of the night to find the man seated at the foot of the bed. At first, he assumed it was a trick of the light, but when the figure shifted slightly, the mattress dipped as though under a real weight. The guest described being paralyzed with fear, unable to move or call out. After several tense moments, the figure slowly dissolved into thin air, leaving the impression of his presence imprinted in the guest's memory forever. Another account comes from a couple who checked into room 16 unaware of its reputation. In the early hours of the morning, the woman awoke to see a shadowy man perched on the bed's edge. She screamed, waking her partner, but by the time he turned on the light, the figure was gone. The mattress, however, still bore the indentation of where someone had been sitting. The couple left the hotel the next day, too shaken to stay another night. Theories about the identity of the spirit in room 16 vary. Some believe he was once a guest who died in the room, perhaps unexpectedly, his spirit lingering in confusion or sorrow. Others speculate he may have been connected to the hotel's early history, a worker or patron who never truly left. There are even whispers of foul play, a tragic story buried by time that left behind restless energy. Whatever the truth may be, the persistence of his presence suggests that room 16 holds secrets that will never be fully revealed. Hotel staff have grown accustomed to hearing stories about room 16, though many admit they avoid entering it unless necessary. Housekeepers have reported strange feelings while cleaning, an oppressive heaviness in the air, as if someone is watching closely. One even claimed to have seen the figure of a man in the mirror while making the bed, only to turn and find the room empty. Another staff member recounted hearing footsteps pacing back and forth when the room was unoccupied, the sound stopping abruptly as she approached the door. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to room 16 repeatedly, eager to uncover the source of its activity. Equipment has captured cold spots, unexplained fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, and even faint recordings of whispers. During one session, an investigator asked if anyone was present, and the playback revealed a deep, unmistakable voice answering, "Yes." Another recording captured the sound of someone exhaling heavily, though no one in the room had made the noise. Despite these findings, the spirit of room 16 refuses to reveal itself fully, keeping its mystery intact. For guests, the allure of room 16 lies in its mix of fear and fascination. Some check in hoping for an encounter, eager to experience the paranormal for themselves. Others are placed there unknowingly, only to leave with stories they cannot explain. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the sheer volume of accounts surrounding room 16 makes it difficult to dismiss entirely. The room has earned its reputation through decades of whispered tales, sleepless nights, and unforgettable experiences. Those who dare to stay in room 16 often speak of an atmosphere unlike any other space in the hotel. The air feels heavier, the silence sharper, as though the room itself is holding its breath. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the shadows seems amplified, and in those still hours of the night, when the world outside has gone quiet, the presence of something unseen becomes undeniable. Room 16 remains a place of mystery, fear, and intrigue. Its walls have absorbed stories that stretch far beyond what history records, and its restless spirit ensures those stories will never fade. For those who have felt the touch of unseen hands, heard the phantom whispers, or seen the man sitting solemnly at the edge of the bed, the experience is unforgettable. Room 16 is not just a room, it is an encounter with the unknown, a reminder that some guests never truly check out. The dining room of the old hotel has long since closed for the night. The clinking of cutlery and murmur of conversation replaced by the steady tick of a grandfather clock near the entrance. Moonlight filters in through tall windows, stretching shadows across the patterned carpet. It is in these quiet hours, when the staff have finished their duties and guests have retreated to their rooms, that an eerie sound sometimes breaks the silence. A giggle, faint and musical, drifts through the air. It is the unmistakable laughter of a child. Those who hear it pause, hearts quickening. For no children are staying in the hotel, and no families have been seen that evening. The laughter does not belong. Many guests have reported hearing it, describing the sound as both cheerful and unsettling. The laughter seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, bouncing off the walls of the dining room and trailing into the lobby. A few brave souls who have risen to investigate swear they saw movement just beyond their sight. A small shadow, quick and darting, skipping across the floor as if playing an unseen game. Yet when they call out, when they search, there is never anyone there. The story of the little girl has become one of the hotel's most whispered tales. Employees, though reluctant to speak openly, exchange knowing glances when the subject arises. More than one staff member has confessed to locking up the dining room late at night only to hear the faint pitter-patter of tiny footsteps behind them. They turn, expecting perhaps another worker or a lost guest, but the space is always empty. Sometimes a chair has shifted slightly, pulled out just enough to look as though someone small had been sitting there moments before. A guest once reported seeing her reflection in one of the tall dining room mirrors. He described walking through the lobby after midnight, the faint glow of the chandelier guiding his steps when he glanced into the glass. Behind him, clear as day, was the form of a young girl no more than 7 years old. She had dark hair pulled back with a ribbon and wore what looked like an old-fashioned dress, the kind not seen in decades. She smiled brightly, almost innocently, and then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. He turned sharply, but the hallway stood empty. Others describe her as only a fleeting presence, a blur at the edge of vision, a shadow darting from one corner of the room to another, too small to be an adult, yet too fast to follow. One guest, sitting alone by the lobby fireplace, swore he saw her skip past the open doorway, her figure lit briefly by the flickering flames. He leaped to his feet, searching the hall, but found nothing except the lingering chill that hadn't been there before. Theories about the little girl abound. Some say she was a guest long ago, perhaps a child who became ill during her stay and never left. Others believe she was the daughter of an early staff member, one who may have spent countless hours in the hotel's halls, laughing and playing before tragedy claimed her young life. A few even suggest she is not tied to the hotel at all, but rather drawn to it, a wandering spirit who found comfort in its grand rooms and refuses to move on. Despite the unease her appearances cause, her presence is never described as threatening. Those who encounter her speak of an odd mixture of fear and tenderness. Her laughter, though chilling in its unexpectedness, carries no malice. Her shadow, though startling, moves with a carefree energy, like that of a child at play. It is as though she exists between two worlds, forever caught in the innocence of youth, yet bound to a place that should no longer hold her. Still, the atmosphere shifts when she is near. Conversations falter, silence grows heavy, and the air takes on a peculiar stillness, broken only by the sudden sound of laughter or the faint rustle of fabric brushing past unseen. The dining room, once lively with the bustle of meals and conversation, becomes something else after dark. To those who know the legend, it is not just a room but a stage upon which the little girl appears, briefly reminding the living of her presence. Guests continue to share their encounters, adding to the lore with each passing year. Some leave unsettled, checking out early and vowing never to return. Others come back deliberately, hoping for another glimpse, convinced they had brushed against something extraordinary. The little girl remains one of the hotel's most enduring mysteries, an echo of childhood that defies time. a fleeting figure who startles and enchants in equal measure. The creak of boots on worn wooden floors has long been one of the most unsettling phenomena in the hotel. Visitors often describe it as a nightly occurrence, a sound that begins softly, almost imperceptibly, then grows steadily louder as if someone is walking just behind them. The steps are deliberate, heavy, and unmistakable, echoing along hallways and staircases in a rhythm that mimics human movement. Yet when anyone dares to turn around, the space behind them is always empty, leaving only silence and the slow fading of the phantom footsteps. Guests first encounter the phenomenon in their rooms or while walking down the long corridors at night. A common report involves hearing a slow, steady tread on the staircase boots, hitting the old wood in precise intervals. Many assume it is another guest or a member of the night staff, but upon reaching the top or bottom of the stairs, they find no one. The sound continues intermittently, sometimes stopping entirely, only to resume moments later. Some describe it as following them from room to room, creating a persistent feeling that someone is watching, trailing their every move. One visitor recalled arriving late in the evening and ascending the main staircase to her room. She was already tired and eager for bed when she heard the unmistakable sound of boots behind her. The creaks matched her own pace perfectly. Step for step, she paused, heart racing, and slowly turned to see. Nothing. The hallway was empty, the dim light casting long shadows but revealing no figure. Terrified, she hurried to her room, only to hear the steps resume, echoing softly outside her door, as if someone had followed her up the stairs. Another account comes from a group of friends staying on the third floor. As they returned from dinner, the rhythmic creak of boots met their ears. They laughed nervously, assuming it was one of their companions playing a prank. But each turned to see that no one else was present. As they entered their rooms, the steps continued, echoing down the hall, fading only after they had closed their doors. The friends compared notes the next morning, each agreeing that the footsteps had followed them individually and simultaneously, an impossible phenomenon that defied logic. Staff members, too, have shared chilling experiences. One longtime housekeeper described walking the hallways late at night when she heard the familiar creak of boots approaching. She assumed it was a security guard making rounds, but when she turned, the hall was completely empty. She swears she felt the presence of someone watching her, an unseen observer that remained just beyond her vision. Another employee reported hearing the steps climb the stairs behind him while he was alone, only to vanish the moment he glanced over his shoulder. Paranormal investigators have frequently focused on the staircase and hallways most often associated with these occurrences. EMF readings spike at certain times of night, and infrared cameras sometimes pick up fleeting shadows that do not correspond to any visible person. Audio recordings frequently capture the sound of boots distinct, heavy, and deliberate, yet no one is ever physically present. One investigation even recorded what sounded like someone pacing outside a guest room for several minutes before abruptly stopping, with no explanation as to what had produced the sound. Theories about the origin of the phantom footsteps vary. Some suggest that the sounds are residual energy, an echo of the countless people who have walked the floors over the hotel's long history. The staircase, in particular, is said to hold a memory of past inhabitants, guesties, staff, and perhaps even tragic figures who left behind impressions that manifest as the creak of boots. Others believe the steps may be tied to a specific spirit, one that has yet to reveal its full identity. Some visitors speculate it could be a former employee or a resident from decades past, endlessly replaying their nightly routine. For guests, the experience is both terrifying and fascinating. The footsteps evoke a primal sense of being followed, triggering the body's instinctive response to unseen danger. Yet many who encounter the phenomenon describe it as oddly precise and intentional, as though the presence is aware of the living, yet does not wish harm. Some have even reported feeling a cold brush of air or a subtle pressure when the footsteps pass, tangible evidence of the presence that seems otherwise invisible. What makes the phantom footsteps particularly unnerving is their consistency. Unlike fleeting shadows or random noises, the sound of boots on the staircase follows patterns that are unmistakably human. Guests have timed the steps, noting their pace, their cadence, and their rhythm, all perfectly measured and consistent with someone walking deliberately. The fact that these steps can echo across empty corridors, stopping and starting at will, adds to the eerie credibility of the encounters. Some visitors have attempted to confront the phenomenon, calling out or standing still to see if it reacts. In many cases, the footsteps appear to respond, pausing when addressed or quickening as if startled by human awareness. Others have tried to capture it on video or audio, with recordings capturing the unmistakable sound of boots striking wood, echoing eerily in the hallways after the camera shows nothing. These repeated occurrences have made the phantom footsteps one of the most talked about aspects of the hotel's haunted history. The legend of the footsteps also serves as a reminder of the hotel's long past. Every creak, every echo, seems to connect the present to decades of history, to the lives and stories that have passed through its halls. Guests often leave with a lingering sense of awe and unease, knowing that even when the building appears empty, it is never truly silent. The footsteps, relentless and precise, suggest a presence that remains tied to the physical space, repeating the motions of life in a form that transcends time. Despite the fear it inspires, some visitors find the experience strangely compelling. They linger longer in the hallways, listening intently for the next step, curious about who or what might be walking just out of sight. The creak of boots, the subtle echo along the staircase, becomes a reminder that history is never fully gone, that the energy of those who came before can linger, persistent and unyielding. Phantom footsteps remain one of the hotel's most enduring mysteries. Guests, staff, and investigators alike have all borne witness to the phenomenon, yet no one can explain it fully. Step by step, the sound continues to haunt the corridors and staircases, echoing through time, leaving those who hear it with a chilling question. Who is walking behind them, and why will they never be seen? The ornate mirror in the hotel's hallway is impossible to miss. Its gilded frame gleams under the dim lighting, carved with intricate patterns that seem almost alive in the flickering glow of the corridor. By day, it reflects the polished floors, the elegant furnishings, and the passing guests. But by night, the mirror is said to reveal something entirely different: a world where the living and the unseen collide, where figures appear behind those who dare to glance at their own reflection. Guests and staff alike have reported seeing the mirror apparition, a phenomenon so consistent and chilling that it has become one of the hotel's most talked about hauntings. The experiences often begin innocently enough. A guest passes the mirror while heading toward their room, catching a glimpse of their own reflection. At first, everything seems normal, the polished glass faithfully returning their image. But then, in the corner of their vision, they notice something that should not be: their shadow, a shape, a figure standing silently behind them. It is always fleeting, a presence that vanishes the instant the observer turns around, leaving the hallway empty and still. One of the earliest recorded sightings involved a woman staying on the third floor. She walked past the mirror late one evening, carrying her luggage. In the reflection, she thought she saw a man in a dark suit standing behind her, his expression unreadable, his posture rigid. Alarmed, she spun around, expecting to confront another guest or perhaps a staff member. There was no one. When she looked back at the mirror, the figure had vanished entirely, leaving only her own startled reflection staring back. She later recounted the experience to the front desk, only to learn that similar encounters had been reported by numerous visitors over the years. Other guests described the figures in more haunting detail. Some see shadowy silhouettes, indistinct and fleeting, while others report clear shapes of men, women, and even children standing silently behind them. One guest described seeing a woman dressed in clothing from a bygone era, her eyes dark and sorrowful, her presence heavy with unspoken grief. Another claimed to see a man with a broad-brimmed hat, leaning slightly, as if observing the hallway with quiet authority. The common thread among these sightings is the sense of being watched, a feeling so strong it leaves the observer frozen in place. Staff members have also experienced the mirror's unsettling power. A housekeeper cleaning the hallway late one night reported seeing a child's reflection standing behind her in the glass. She turned immediately, her heart pounding, but the corridor was empty. Another employee, closing for the evening, swears he saw multiple figures clustered behind a guest as he passed the mirror, only for them to vanish the moment the person turned their head. The consistency of these reports over decades has convinced even the most skeptical staff that the mirror is no ordinary reflective surface. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the hallway time and again, intrigued by the mirror's reputation. Infrared cameras and motion sensors often pick up nothing unusual. Yet audio recordings sometimes capture faint whispers or the rustle of movement in otherwise empty corridors. Some investigators claim that the mirror seems to respond to the presence of living observers, revealing figures only when someone looks into the glass, then hiding them the instant the viewer turns away. Others speculate that the mirror is a window to another time, reflecting moments from the hotel's past or the lingering spirits who have not moved on. Theories about the mirror's apparitions abound. Some suggest that it holds residual energy, capturing echoes of people who once walked those hallways. Perhaps it is connected to the hotel's history, showing the spirits of past guests or long-deceased staff who remain tethered to the building. Others propose a more supernatural explanation, that the mirror acts as a portal, revealing entities that exist just beyond the veil of the living world. Whatever the case, those who have seen the figures describe the experience as deeply unsettling, leaving an impression that lasts far longer than the brief encounter. Guests often report a mixture of fear and fascination when encountering the mirror apparition. Many admit to feeling watched in the hallway afterward, expecting to see the figures reappear at any moment. Some are so unsettled that they avoid passing the mirror entirely, choosing alternate routes to their rooms. Others, driven by curiosity, deliberately return to the hallway, peering into the glass late at night to see if the figures will appear again. A few have reported glimpsing the same figure on multiple occasions, leading them to believe that some spirits are attached to specific spots along the hallway, watching silently through the mirror. What makes the experience of the mirror apparition particularly haunting is its fleeting nature. The figures are always visible in the reflection, but they never reveal themselves in reality. Guests turn to confront them and find nothing. It is a haunting illusion that plays on perception and fear, leaving the observer with an unshakable awareness that something exists just beyond the boundary of the visible world. The mirror becomes both a window and a barrier, showing a presence that cannot be touched, yet cannot be ignored. For many, the allure of the mirror is irresistible despite the fear it inspires. Some visitors linger, captivated by the strange interplay of reflection and apparition, watching the glass for signs of movement. Others leave hurriedly, disturbed by the sudden flashes of figures that appear and vanish. The stories continue to grow, each new sighting reinforcing the legend and adding layers to the hotel's haunted history. The mirror apparition serves as a reminder that the hotel is more than a collection of rooms and corridors. It is a vessel of memory, a place where the past lingers in unexpected ways. The gilded glass reflects not only the living, but also the echoes of those who came before, their presence imprinted in the very fabric of the building. Guests, staff, and investigators all agree that once you see a figure in the mirror, the memory is impossible to forget. In the quiet hours of the night, when the hallways are empty and the lights are low, the mirror waits silently. A guest may glance into its surface and see only themselves, or, if they are unlucky, they may glimpse a figure standing just behind them, watching, waiting, and vanishing the moment they dare to look. The mirror apparition endures as one of the hotel's most haunting mysteries, a spectral presence that blurs the line between reflection and reality, leaving anyone who encounters it with a sense of wonder, fear, and undeniable intrigue. The soldier's spirit is one of the most enduring legends tied to the hotel, a spectral figure that has captured the imagination of both guests and locals for generations. Unlike other hauntings, which are often confined to private rooms or shadowed hallways, this apparition is most commonly seen near the entrance, greeting visitors with a presence that feels both formal and commanding. Witnesses describe him as a man clad in a cavalry uniform, the polished buttons and carefully pressed fabric strangely immaculate despite the passage of time. What makes his appearances unforgettable is the quiet ritual he performs. Standing erect, he lifts a hand in a precise salute, then vanishes, leaving behind nothing but the echo of formality and the lingering sensation that history has just brushed against the present. The first accounts of the soldier's spirit date back decades, when the hotel was still closely associated with Buffalo Bill Cody and his Wild West shows. Locals and longtime guests tell stories of stepping through the entrance late at night and catching sight of a uniformed man standing just inside the doors. At first, many assumed it was a reenactor, a staff member in costume maintaining the hotel's thematic legacy. But when they approached, the figure would fade into nothing, leaving the marble floors empty and silent, and the observer alone with a rising sense of awe and unease. One particularly detailed report comes from a guest who arrived during a late evening, tired from a long journey. As he entered the lobby, he noticed a man standing at attention near the entrance. The uniform caught his eye immediately. Gold braids across the chest, a polished cavalry jacket, and a hat tipped slightly forward. The man raised his hand in a crisp, formal salute. Confused and intrigued, the guest stepped closer, but as he drew near, the soldier slowly dissolved into the air, leaving no trace of fabric, shadow, or presence. The guest later admitted that the memory of the salute stayed with him for years. A hauntingly dignified gesture that seemed almost purposeful, as if acknowledging him personally. Other guests have shared similar encounters. Some see the soldier merely standing, watching silently as they enter or leave the hotel. Others report seeing him pace briefly before halting and offering the signature salute. The appearances are never threatening. Rather, the soldier conveys a sense of respect and solemnity, as though fulfilling a duty that extends beyond life. Many describe feeling a chill or sudden drop in temperature in the immediate vicinity, a physical reminder that the apparition is more than a trick of light or imagination. Locals have speculated for decades about the soldier's identity. A common theory is that he was one of Buffalo Bill's companions, a member of the cavalry or Wild West performers who traveled with the shows. These men were known for their strict discipline and loyalty, characteristics that seem perfectly reflected in the soldier's behavior. According to folklore, he may have been attached to the hotel during its heyday, either staying there while performing with Cody's troupe or serving in some ceremonial capacity. His spirit, some believe, remains bound to the site, performing the ritual salute he carried out in life. Honoring his companions and the legacy of the Wild West shows, hotel staff have long acknowledged the soldier's presence, often recounting their own encounters. One front desk clerk recalled working a late shift when she noticed a figure standing near the entrance, uniformed and silent. She froze, unsure whether to greet him, but before she could react, he lifted his hand in a perfect salute and then vanished. On another occasion, a bellhop reported feeling a sudden pressure at his shoulder, like someone passing too closely, only to turn and find nothing there. These experiences, repeated over years, have solidified the soldier as one of the hotel's most recognizable spirits. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the soldier's spirit for the same reasons. EMF readings sometimes spike near the entrance at night, and thermal cameras occasionally capture a faint heat signature resembling a human form standing briefly in the lobby. Audio devices have occasionally picked up the faint click of polished boots against the floor or the subtle rustle of a uniform, even when the area is completely empty. While none of these observations provide conclusive proof, they add to the weight of evidence supporting the persistent reports of guests and staff. What sets the soldier's spirit apart from other apparitions is the ceremonial precision of his behavior. The salute is consistent across decades of sightings, executed with military exactness, and the timing always coincides with guests' presence near the entrance. This sense of routine suggests a lingering purpose, a duty that transcends death. Unlike restless or malevolent spirits reported elsewhere, the soldier seems bound to a singular task, standing guard, acknowledging the living with respect, and fading away without further disturbance. Visitors often describe the effect of the encounter as both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Seeing a figure from the past, so meticulously presented and so fleeting, creates a sense of time collapsing. One moment, the hotel is a modern establishment filled with contemporary guests. The next, a soldier from another era appears, performing a ritual from a long past age. The contrast is jarring, yet strangely comforting, suggesting that some remnants of history remain loyal, even in spirit form. Some guests deliberately seek out the soldier's spirit, lingering near the entrance after dark, hoping for a glimpse of the figure. Others stumble upon him unexpectedly, drawn by a flicker of movement or the faint impression of authority in the air. Few leave without remarking on the experience, and many report that the salute, though brief, feels personal, a moment of acknowledgement that transcends the physical world. The soldier's spirit endures as one of the hotel's most iconic hauntings, a presence tied both to history and to the lives of those who once passed through its doors. He is a reminder of the human stories embedded in the building, the performers, soldiers, and guests whose lives left a mark that refuses to fade. Time may move forward, but in the lobby, near the entrance, the soldier stands eternally at attention, saluting silently and vanishing once again, an enduring guardian of the hotel's past, witnessed by those fortunate enough to cross his path. For anyone entering the hotel, the memory of the salute lingers. It is brief, fleeting, and impossible to hold on to, yet it leaves a profound impression. The soldier's spirit serves as a reminder that the past is never truly gone, that the echoes of loyalty, duty, and honor can linger far beyond life, manifesting in moments that bridge centuries and awaken the imagination. The figure at the entrance waits patiently, standing guard in silence. A ghostly sentinel who continues to honor the legacy of Buffalo Bill and the Wild West shows for all who pass through the hotel's doors. The restaurant has seen generations of diners pass through its doors, each one leaving behind fragments of laughter, conversation, and the clatter of cutlery. By day, it bustles with warmth and chatter, the clinking of glasses blending with the aromas of freshly cooked meals. But as night falls and the last of the guests depart, a peculiar stillness often settles over the room. It is in those quieter hours, when shadows grow long and only a few tables remain occupied, that a figure sometimes appears who does not belong to the living. She is known simply as the Phantom Waitress. Many who have dined here speak of catching her presence out of the corner of their eye, a woman in the crisp uniform of a bygone era, her hair pinned neatly beneath a small cap, her posture poised with practiced efficiency. She carries a tray in her hands, balancing glasses and plates as though in the middle of a shift. Diners describe her walking briskly across the floor, her steps purposeful and steady, the faint sound of clinking silver trailing behind her. Yet before anyone can approach her, before a greeting can be offered, she vanishes. She does not exit through a door or disappear around a corner. She passes straight through the solid wall, leaving stunned guests in silence. The first reports of her came decades ago. A couple dining late one evening claimed to see a waitress striding past their table, ignoring their attempt to call her over. At first they thought she was simply busy, until they watched her walk directly into the far wall and vanish without a trace. Their stories spread, and over time, more and more guests began to report the same unsettling sight. Always the same woman, always the same brisk walk, always the same uncanny ending. Some who have seen her describe a kind of timelessness to her appearance. Her uniform does not match the modern attire of the staff, but seems to belong to another age, perhaps the 1940s or 1950s. Her skirt falls neatly to the knee, her blouse pressed and formal, her demeanor calm but determined. She never looks directly at the diners, never engages with them, as though her mind is elsewhere. It is as if she is caught in a loop, endlessly performing a duty she never finished. The sounds she brings with her unsettle even those who never see her. Many guests have reported hearing the metallic chime of silverware clinking together when no one is near. Glasses seem to tinkle as if shifted on a tray, though the waitstaff are far across the room. Sometimes, in the lull between courses, the sound of plates stacking softly against one another drifts from an empty corner. Staff members, long accustomed to the quirks of the building, admit that when the clatter of unseen dishes begins, they know she is near. Some diners have even reported a sudden chill in the air as she passes. The warmth of the room dips briefly, a shiver runs along the skin, and then her figure slips past, fading as quickly as it appeared. Those closest to her path say they feel a strange pressure in the atmosphere, like walking through an unseen current, followed by the unmistakable aroma of old coffee and kitchen steam. Legends about the phantom waitress's origin are plentiful. One story suggests she was a devoted worker who collapsed during a long shift and never left the restaurant she loved. Another tale speaks of a tragic fire decades ago, in which a waitress lost her life trying to guide patrons to safety. Some believe she is not tied to tragedy at all, but to routine, her spirit simply unable to abandon the role she carried out with such dedication in life. Whatever the truth, her presence has never been described as threatening. Instead, she seems endlessly busy, moving swiftly, serving guests only she can see. There are stories of more direct encounters, though they are rare. One late-night patron swore that the phantom approached his table. He described her as quiet but graceful, setting down an invisible plate before walking away. Though nothing rested on the table, he claimed he heard the clear sound of silver touching porcelain. Another diner once reported feeling a light brush against her arm, the unmistakable sensation of someone squeezing past with a tray in hand. Yet when she turned, the space beside her was empty. Staff members, too, have had their share of encounters. A server recounted closing up one night when she heard footsteps crossing the dining room. Expecting a coworker, she looked up only to see the faint figure of a woman striding through the tables, her outline blurred but recognizable. She disappeared through the far wall without a sound, leaving the servers shaken and speechless. Others admit to finding chairs slightly moved, tables subtly adjusted, as though someone invisible had been tending to them between shifts. For regulars, the phantom waitress has become a curious part of the dining experience. Some return hoping for a glimpse, considering it a kind of hidden attraction. Others, unnerved by the thought of a spirit gliding past their meal, request seats away from the spots most often linked to her appearances. The management rarely acknowledges her directly, but seasoned employees know the lore well. The faint clink of phantom silverware, they say, is as much a part of the restaurant as its menu, though she may never reveal her story. The phantom waitress continues her silent service, passing through the dining room with unending devotion. She is a figure of mystery, a reminder that some ties to the world of the living are too strong to break. Her form flickers between the past and the present, an echo of a life once dedicated to serving others. And as diners raise their glasses and enjoy their meals, they sometimes pause, sensing her quiet presence in the room. The faint rhythm of unseen footsteps carrying her on an endless route through the restaurant. The basement of the old hotel is a place few willingly enter. Its stone walls are damp with age, the air heavy with the smell of earth and mildew. The single light bulb overhead hums faintly when switched on, casting a weak yellow glow that seems swallowed by the darkness. Employees often use it for storage, bringing down crates, linens, or supplies. But no one likes to stay there longer than necessary. Over the years, it has developed a reputation, not just as an unpleasant workspace, but as a place haunted by something unnatural. They speak of a shadow that moves on its own, darker than the absence of light, tall and formless, slipping from corner to corner as though it waits for someone to remain behind. The first accounts were dismissed as tricks of the eye. Staff would descend the creaking stairs with their arms full of stock and swear they saw movement just beyond the reach of the bulb. A quick glance would reveal nothing, only shelves stacked with goods. But the unease lingered, the sensation of being watched pressing heavily on their backs until they hurried upstairs again. What unsettled them most was the feeling that whatever they saw wasn't simply hiding in the dark. It was the dark itself, gathering and shifting in ways that made no sense. One employee, a young dishwasher working a late shift, shared a story that quickly spread among the staff. He had gone into the basement to retrieve extra cleaning supplies. While searching through the shelves, He noticed the far wall seemed darker than usual, as though a pool of ink had spilled across it. As he stared, the darkness detached itself from the wall and stretched upward into a towering figure. He described it as impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. With no discernible features except for its sheer blackness, it moved, gliding from one side of the room to the other without a sound, then melted into the corner and disappeared. The young man bolted up the stairs, pale and shaking, and refused to go down there again. Others have echoed his description. The shadow is always tall, always featureless, and always accompanied by an overwhelming sense of dread. Employees often say that the air itself seems to grow heavier when it appears, pressing down on their chests and making it difficult to breathe. Some describe feeling nauseous or dizzy, as if the very presence of the figure drains their energy. A few have claimed that, when it lingers too long, the temperature plummets, and the walls seem to close in tighter around them. One night, a bartender stayed late to do inventory and decided to finish the task by retrieving an old box from the basement. She later told her coworkers she felt watched the moment she descended. The air was still, yet she swore she heard faint rustling, as though something massive shifted in the dark. When she turned her flashlight toward the far corner, the beam seemed to dissolve into blackness instead of illuminating it. Within that void, the tall figure began to emerge, stepping forward with no sound, its shape wider and darker with every moment. She dropped the box and fled, certain that if she hadn't, the thing would have reached her. She has never entered the basement again. Some staff have developed their own rituals to cope with the unease. A few refuse to go down without company, insisting the shadow never shows itself when more than one person is present. Others whistle or hum loudly as they work, hoping noise will keep their nerves steady. Even then, many claim they feel the shadow lurking just beyond the shelves, pacing, waiting for silence to return. Theories about the shadow abound. Some believe it is a spirit of a former worker who died tragically in the building's early years, now bound to the dark place where he suffered. Others think it is something older, not human at all. A remnant of the land before the hotel was built, a presence awakened by the intrusion of construction. A few whisper that the shadow is a kind of portal, a figure born of negative energy that thrives on fear and dread, feeding off anyone unlucky enough to wander too far into the basement. What unsettles most witnesses is the way the shadow seems aware of them. It doesn't drift randomly, but appears to react, gliding closer when someone lingers too long, vanishing only when fear drives them away. One cook, known for his skepticism, tried to confront it after hearing countless stories. He deliberately stayed behind one night, standing in the basement with only a flashlight in hand. He later admitted that within minutes, the air grew suffocating, his light dimmed inexplicably, and the shadow stretched across the room toward him. It towered higher and higher until he could see nothing else. He fled, shaken to the core, unwilling to spend another second in its presence. Even guests have occasionally reported strange occurrences. A few who stayed in rooms above the basement claimed they were kept awake by odd noises, heavy footsteps echoing up through the floorboards, though no one was below. Others spoke of cold drafts seeping into their rooms despite tightly shut windows. One particularly sensitive visitor claimed she woke in the night to see a tall, dark figure standing in the corner of her room, identical to the descriptions given by the staff. When she screamed, the shadow dissolved into the air, leaving only a lingering chill. Today, the basement remains in use, but only reluctantly. Employees move quickly, keeping their tasks brief, never lingering longer than necessary. The tall, inky shadow is still spoken of in hushed tones, its presence both feared and reluctantly respected. For some, it is a ghost, for others, a darker force beyond understanding. But all agree on one thing. Whatever it is, it does not want company. Those who have felt its gaze never forget the sensation, the oppressive dread, the heaviness of the air, the primal instinct to run. The basement may be part of the building, but it feels like a different world altogether, one ruled by a figure made of shadow, waiting in silence for the next soul, brave or foolish enough to enter alone. The dining room is the heart of the old hotel, a grand space built to impress visitors with its sweeping ceilings, polished woodwork, and the glittering chandelier that hangs at its center. The chandelier has always been a point of pride, a massive fixture of gleaming crystal and wrought metal, its prisms scattering light into rainbows across the tables below. Guests often stop to admire it when they first enter the room, remarking on its elegance and the craftsmanship of a bygone era. Yet, for all its beauty, the chandelier has gained a reputation not just as a centerpiece, but as the source of one of the hotel's most unnerving mysteries. During the bustle of dinner service, when waiters glide between tables and conversation hums through the air, the chandelier sometimes begins to move. At first it is subtle, a faint sway that could easily be dismissed as imagination. But within moments, the gentle motion grows into a violent swing, its arms rattling, its crystals clinking together as if unseen hands are pulling it back and forth with force. Diners stop mid-bite, forks frozen halfway to their mouths, as they stare upward at the glittering mass trembling above their heads. Some gasp, others whisper nervously, and more than a few push their chairs back, fearful the entire fixture might come crashing down. The strange thing is that there is never any cause. No draft runs through the room, no earthquake shakes the walls, no one nearby touches the chains from which it hangs. Maintenance crews have inspected it countless times, testing the support beams, the hooks, and the links of iron that keep it aloft. Each time they declare it sound, impossible to sway on its own. And yet, the phenomenon persists, baffling those who witness it. The earliest stories of the shaking chandelier date back to the 1930s, when the dining room first became a hub for traveling businessmen and wealthy families on holiday. A letter from that era described a dinner party interrupted by what the writer called a most dreadful commotion in the lights above. He wrote of guests fleeing the table as the chandelier swung so hard the crystals struck against each other with a sound like breaking glass. When the staff investigated, they found nothing amiss. The chandelier was still firmly anchored, the ceiling undamaged, and the fixture intact. It was as if the event had never happened. Over the years, similar reports continued. A wedding reception in the 1950s was thrown into chaos when the chandelier began rocking. During the cutting of the cake, frightening the bride so badly she nearly fainted. In the 1970s, a group of tourists claimed to see it move in response to their conversation, trembling more violently the louder they laughed. More recent guests have taken videos and photographs, though the recordings often appear inconclusive, the sway too subtle to prove to skeptics, yet too strange to ignore. The most chilling aspect, according to witnesses, is the atmosphere that descends when the chandelier begins to move. The air grows heavy, conversation falters, and a feeling of tension grips the room. Some diners describe it as a sudden shift in pressure, almost as if the room itself is holding its breath. Others speak of a cold draft that brushes their skin, though the windows remain sealed. And metal. But whispers, sighs, or even the muffled cry of someone unseen. Staff members have their own stories. One server swore she saw the chains holding the chandelier stretched taut, as if being yanked by invisible hands. Another described hearing a sharp metallic creak from the ceiling moments before it began to swing, though no damage was ever found. A longtime manager admitted he avoids seating guests directly beneath it whenever possible, preferring to leave that space empty in case the fixture should fall. Despite the fear it inspires, however, it never has. For all its furious shaking, the chandelier has never once broken loose. Theories about the cause are as varied as the witnesses themselves. Some believe the chandelier is tied to the spirit of a former guest who met their end in the dining room. Rumors tell of a wealthy man who collapsed beneath its glow during a lavish meal, his life ending abruptly as laughter turned to panic around him. Others whisper of a servant who fell from the rafters while installing it, his spirit doomed to rattle the fixture he never finished securing. A few even suggest the chandelier itself, with its intricate design and long history, acts as a vessel for lingering energy, storing decades of emotion and releasing it in bursts of violent motion. Skeptics, of course, argue that drafts or vibrations from the building are to blame. Yet the staff insists there are no vents near the ceiling capable of creating such force. And the chandelier's violent movements often occur at times when the building is otherwise still. What remains is a mystery with no rational explanation, leaving only the eerie conclusion that something unseen is indeed at play. For guests, the shaking chandelier has become both a source of dread and fascination. Some visit the restaurant specifically hoping to see it move, cameras ready to capture the spectacle. Others find the very thought unsettling, choosing to dine as far from its reach as possible. It has become part of the lore of the hotel, a tale shared by tour guides and whispered among guests late at night, each retelling adding to its legend. Even now, as dinner is served and the chandelier glows with hundreds of tiny lights, its presence dominates the room. Diners tilt their heads upward, watching for the first sign of motion, wondering if tonight will be the night it begins to sway. And when it does, when the crystals rattle and the chains groan as if pulled by unseen hands, silence falls across the tables. In that moment, the elegant dining room transforms into something else entirely, a stage where the past collides with the present, and the unseen makes itself known in a glittering, terrifying display. The chandelier eventually stills, as if satisfied with the chaos it has caused. Guests return to their meals, though their eyes dart upward again and again, waiting for the next tremor. The staff continue their work with quiet resignation, knowing that the grand centerpiece above them is more than just a fixture of beauty. It is a reminder that some parts of the hotel belong not to the living, but to whatever lingers in the shadows, forever tugging at the chandelier that sways without cause. The old hotel is filled with hallways and corners that seem to carry their own secrets, but none stir more unease among the staff than the narrow corridor leading to the storage room. At first glance, the door appears unremarkable plain wood, scuffed from years of use, with a tarnished brass knob. It is where extra linens, cleaning supplies, and seldom used furniture are kept. Yet behind that door lies one of the hotel's most unsettling mysteries. For reasons no one has been able to explain, the door has a habit of locking itself. Sometimes it does so while someone is inside, trapping them within. Other times it refuses to open at all, as though sealed by something stronger than the simple latch that secures it. The first reports came many decades ago. A maid had gone inside to retrieve spare bedding and found herself unable to leave. The knob turned uselessly in her hand, and the key on her ring would not fit the lock, though it always had before. She pounded on the door until another staff member heard her cries and rushed to help. Yet when he tried the knob, it turned easily, and the door swung open without resistance. The maid was shaken, insisting it had held her fast for nearly half an hour. Others laughed it off as a jammed mechanism. But the story lingered. Over the years, more employees began to report similar experiences. A bellhop sent to fetch a trunk was trapped inside for nearly an hour, pounding and shouting, while coworkers outside claimed they heard nothing. When they finally opened the door, he emerged pale and shaken, insisting he had heard voices whispering all around him. Though the room had been empty, a maintenance worker claimed he felt the knob twist under his hand from the inside, as if someone unseen were trying to keep him out. And one young server swore that the door slammed shut behind her with such force it rattled the walls, though no draft or person could have caused it. The most disturbing accounts come from those who have been locked inside. They all describe the same sensation, a sudden drop in temperature. The air thick and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. Some say the light bulb overhead flickers or dies, plunging the room into near darkness. And always, there are the whispers. Faint at first, like the rustle of distant conversation, then growing clearer, as if voices are speaking just beyond the walls. Witnesses claim they cannot make out the words, only the tones, urgent, angry, sometimes pleading. One woman broke down in tears after being freed, swearing the voices had called her name over and over, urging her to stay. Not all incidents end quickly. A porter once vanished for nearly 2 hours before being found in the storage room, curled in the corner and muttering incoherently. He later confessed that he had been unable to move, paralyzed by the oppressive weight of unseen eyes watching him. Another employee, trying to be brave, deliberately locked herself inside to prove the legends were exaggerated. When co-workers unlocked the door minutes later, she bolted out, trembling, unable to speak of what she had experienced. To this day, she avoids the corridor entirely. Attempts to repair or replace the door have proven fruitless. Maintenance teams have changed the knob, adjusted the frame, even replaced the lock entirely, yet the phenomenon persists. The door continues to trap people at random, sometimes swinging open easily, other times resisting every effort. Theories abound among the staff. Some whisper that a former employee once perished in that very room, trapped inside with no one to hear his cries. Others believe the door is a gateway of sorts, a thin place where the living brush against something beyond. Guests, too, have occasionally encountered the mystery. A few report walking down the hallway and hearing frantic pounding from within the locked room, only to find it empty when opened. Others claim to have heard muffled voices as they passed, though no staff were inside. One couple on a ghost tour swore they saw the knob twist violently on its own, rattling as if someone inside were trying desperately to get out. The guide, shaken but composed, ushered them quickly away. Despite its reputation, the room is still used, though reluctantly. Staff often go in pairs, unwilling to risk being trapped alone. They leave the door propped open with a heavy box or wedge a chair under the knob, small acts of defiance against whatever unseen force seems to control it. Still, there are times when even these precautions fail. On more than one occasion, the wedge has been found shoved aside, the door shut tight, though no one was nearby to move it. The locked door has become a kind of unspoken rule among the employees. Respect it, do not linger near it, and never step inside without someone waiting on the other side. It has woven itself into the lore of the hotel, a story passed down to new hires with a mixture of warning and dread. Those who have experienced it firsthand carried the memory with them. The sound of whispers in the darkness etched permanently into their minds. To this day, no one knows why the door behaves as it does. Perhaps it is the restless echo of a soul who once met their end within its walls. Perhaps it is something darker, drawn to the fear of those it traps. Or perhaps it is simply the building itself, alive in some way, choosing to remind those who serve within it that they are never truly alone. Whatever the reason, the door remains, standing silent in its hallway, waiting. To most it is nothing but a piece of wood and iron, but to those who have felt its lock click shut behind them, it is a boundary between the safe and the unknown. And when the whispers rise again from the other side, curling through the silence like fingers reaching out, those who hear them know the truth. Some doors are not meant to be opened, and once inside, they may not let you go. In the stillness of the night, when the hotel halls fall silent and only the hum of distant machinery breaks the quiet, the ringing begins. It is sharp, insistent, echoing through the rooms like an unwelcome intrusion. Guests have long spoken of these mysterious phone calls, always arriving in the late hours when the mind is most vulnerable and the darkness outside feels endless. The phones ring with perfect clarity, but when the receiver is lifted, no voice greets the listener. Instead, there is silence or something worse. The earliest accounts date back decades, when the hotel still used rotary phones in every guest room. A traveling salesman once reported being startled awake by the piercing ring. Groggy and irritated, he picked up, expecting a wrong number, or perhaps the front desk, but what met his ear was not silence. He described faint breathing on the other end, steady and deliberate, like someone standing close but refusing to speak. He demanded to know who was there, his voice shaking with anger, but no reply came. The breathing lingered for nearly a minute before the line went dead with a click. The salesman was so unnerved, he checked out the next morning without explanation. Since then, countless guests have shared similar experiences. The details vary slightly, but the pattern remains the same. A late-night call, an empty line, and a sound that chills the blood. Some report faint breathing, others a low murmur that cannot be understood. The most disturbing accounts speak of laughter, a soft chuckle that creeps through the line, mocking, before cutting off abruptly. Always, the call ends without warning, leaving only the heavy silence of a disconnected line. The front desk has denied making the calls. On nights when complaints pour in, staff insists no calls were placed, and the phone logs confirm it. Maintenance teams have checked the wiring, replaced old systems with new, even brought in specialists to trace the source. Yet, the calls persist, always in the same eerie fashion. Some suggest it must be a prank by a mischievous guest, but the phenomenon has continued through generations, long before modern conveniences made such tricks simple. Others whispered that the calls are not earthly at all, but the work of something unseen that lingers within the hotel's walls. Employees have their own stories, passed along with unease. A night clerk once confessed to answering the lobby phone after it rang without a signal. On the line, he heard a woman's voice whisper his name, though no guest had checked in under anyone he knew. He froze, listening as the voice repeated his name again and again, each time softer until it faded into nothing. Another staff member recalled standing near the front desk when every room phone lit up at once, ringing in unison. The sound filled the lobby like a cacophony, only to fall silent the moment she reached for a receiver. Guests often describe the calls as invasive, as though the caller knows they are alone. A young couple, staying for their anniversary, awoke to the phone ringing shortly after midnight. The husband answered and was met with a faint chuckle that echoed unnaturally through the receiver. His wife swore she heard it too, though she had not lifted the phone. Terrified, they unplugged the device, but minutes later, it rang again, still disconnected, its cord dangling uselessly. They checked out early the next morning, their celebration cut short by the memory of that laughter. In some cases, the calls seemed personal. One man claimed he heard his deceased mother's voice whisper his childhood nickname, followed by the sound of gentle breathing. Another swore the voice on the line recited his room number over and over, as if taunting him. Perhaps the most unsettling story comes from a woman traveling alone. She answered the phone to hear her own voice, repeating her words back to her, distorted slightly, as if spoken from far away. When she slammed the receiver down, the phone rang again immediately. She left the hotel in tears, vowing never to return. Legends have grown around the phenomenon, each more chilling than the last. Some say the calls are from former guests who died within the hotel, reaching out to remind the living of their presence. Others believe the building itself acts as a conduit, channeling voices from another realm through its outdated phone lines. A darker theory suggests the calls are lures, designed to draw the curious into conversation with forces that should not be acknowledged. Whatever the truth, the experiences remain consistent enough that even skeptics grow uneasy when the phones ring after midnight. The atmosphere of the calls extends beyond the sound itself. Many guests describe a shift in the air during the moment, the temperature dropping suddenly, the feeling of being watched from the corners of the room. Some claim the shadows sink deeper, stretching unnaturally across the walls as the phone rings. Even after hanging up, the sense of dread lingers, as though something unseen has entered with the call and remains nearby, just out of sight. The hotel has tried to downplay the stories, but they persist in whispers among staff and guests. Those who work the night shifts admit they dread the sound of a phone ringing after hours, their hearts leaping as they pick up, praying to hear nothing more than static. Guests who have endured the calls often leave their rooms with the receivers dangling, unable to bear the thought of answering again. To this day, the phones still ring at odd hours. The calls still carry the faint breathing, the soft chuckles, the occasional whisper that chills the soul. There is no explanation, no culprit, and no solution. All that remains is the unnerving truth that in the quiet of the night, when the world is asleep and the halls are empty, the phones of the hotel may connect to something not of this world. In the early hours of the morning, when the hotel is at its quietest and the world outside is only beginning to stir, a sound breaks the silence. It is not the shuffle of staff preparing for the day, nor the creak of old pipes in the walls. Instead, it is the unmistakable jingle of spurs, sharp, metallic, and deliberate echoing across the wooden floorboards. Many who have stayed in the hotel speak of it with unease, describing how the steady rhythm of cowboy boots seems to march through the halls long before dawn. The sound always comes when no one should be awake, and no one is ever found making it. Guests have described the sound with startling consistency. It begins faintly, almost like a trick of the ear, before growing louder, as though someone is walking the length of the hall, just outside their door. The boots carry weight. Each step is heavy, dragging slightly, as if the wearer is exhausted after a long ride. Then comes the metallic jingle, the spurs clinking together with every step, echoing unnaturally in the quiet of the pre-dawn hours. Some say the sound halts directly outside their room, lingering for a moment before moving on. Others claim the footsteps pass right through the hallway, fading into nothing just as quickly as they began. The stories are so numerous and similar that even staff admit the phenomenon cannot be dismissed. One maid recalled arriving early for her shift, entering the side door just as the sun was breaking over the horizon. She heard the boots echoing down the main hallway and assumed a guest had risen unusually early. But when she turned the corner, the hall was empty. The sound persisted, moving toward the dining room. But when she followed, no one was there. The swinging doors creaked open on their own, though no hand had touched them. Shaken, she swore she would never again arrive before daylight. Legends have risen around the source of the boots. Some say they belonged to a rancher who once frequented the hotel, a man who died suddenly in one of the rooms after a long night of drinking. Others whisper of a gunslinger who was shot on the premises, his restless spirit forever pacing the halls in search of unfinished business. The most popular tale claims the boots belonged to Buffalo Bill himself, returning to his beloved establishment to ensure it still stands proud. Whatever the case, the sound of the boots has been reported too often to dismiss as imagination. One couple staying on the second floor experienced the phenomenon firsthand. They awoke just before dawn to the sound of heavy steps pacing the hallway outside their room. The husband, curious and annoyed, opened the door quickly, hoping to catch the culprit. He expected to see a late arriving guest or perhaps a staff member, but the hall was empty. The sound, however, continued right in front of him. He swore he could hear the boots striking the floor just a few feet away, accompanied by the metallic jingle of spurs, but no figure was visible. His wife joined him at the doorway, her face pale as she too confirmed hearing the sounds. Then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the steps stopped. Silence returned, heavy and absolute, leaving them both shaken. Another story tells of a group of friends staying in adjoining rooms. They had stayed up late, laughing and telling stories, when just before dawn, the distinct sound of boots interrupted them. All fell silent, listening as the jingling footsteps moved down the hallway, slow and deliberate. One of the men opened his door to peek out but was greeted only by an empty corridor. The footsteps, however, continued, as though invisible boots walked right past him. When he shut the door in panic, the sound stopped outside his room, lingering there for several long minutes before finally retreating into silence. Staff have also spoken of strange occurrences linked to the boots. A bartender claimed he often heard them crossing the dining room before sunrise. Long before the doors were unlocked, he would find the chairs slightly askew, as though someone had moved through in the night. Another employee confessed that when she was alone in the lobby one morning, she heard the boots circle the room behind her, though she saw nothing. The oppressive feeling of being watched grew so strong that she abandoned her duties until others arrived. The boots are not always limited to sound. Some guests report a faint shadow accompanying the footsteps, fleeting and incomplete, like the silhouette of a tall man blurred against a wall. A few claim to have caught glimpses of worn leather boots beneath the hem of phantom trousers, appearing for only a moment before vanishing. The most unsettling accounts tell of doors opening slightly as the steps approach, then closing again after the sound has passed, as though the unseen figure prefers not to be hindered in his walk. Theories abound as to why the boots appear only at dawn. Some suggest the spirit behind them was tied to the early hours, perhaps a ranch hand rising before daylight, or a cowboy returning from long nights on the trail. Others believe dawn holds a liminal energy, a crossing point between night and day, when the barrier between worlds is thin. The boots, they say, are a remnant of that crossing. A spectral routine played out again and again in the quiet hours when the hotel is most vulnerable. For many, the sound of the cowboy boots is the most chilling of the hotel's hauntings. Unlike a fleeting shadow or a cold draft, the boots feel tangible, grounded in the physical world. They carry weight, rhythm, and presence, as if a man of flesh and bone is pacing the floors. And yet, there is never anyone there. Guests who have heard the spurs insist the sound is too real, too sharp, to be dismissed as imagination. It is the kind of experience that burrows deep, leaving a person unsettled long after the morning sun rises. To this day, visitors still report being awakened before dawn by the heavy tread of boots and the metallic jingle of spurs. Some pull the covers over their heads, too afraid to listen. Others lie frozen, hearts pounding, as the sound passes their door. A few brave souls rise to investigate, but always they find the same thing: an empty hallway, silent and still, as though nothing at all has moved. Yet those who have heard the boots know otherwise. They know that somewhere within the walls, a lone cowboy still walks, his presence marked only by the steady rhythm of his steps and the haunting jingle that refuses to fade. No matter how many years have passed, in the heart of the hotel lobby, where the glow of the grand fireplace has long been a source of comfort for weary travelers, there lingers a mystery that no fire has ever been able to chase away. The fireplace, crafted from stone and brick over a century ago, roars hot with flame on winter nights, filling the air with the crackle of burning wood and the smell of smoke. Guests gather there to warm their hands, sip drinks, or trade stories. Yet amid the heat lies a phenomenon that defies all logic. Just a few feet from the blaze, in the very place where one would expect the air to be thick with warmth, there is a patch of icy chill. It hangs in the air like an invisible cloud, cutting through coats and sweaters, leaving goosebumps on the skin of anyone who dares step into it. This strange phenomenon has come to be known simply as the cold spot. Guests often stumble upon it by accident, stepping forward to feel the fire's warmth only to recoil in shock. The air is so cold it bites, like stepping into a winter storm. Some describe it as if a block of ice were hovering there, others as a suffocating chill that seems to sink into the bones. The strangest detail is that the cold never shifts or fades. Night after night, no matter how fierce the fire burns, the spot remains. Even during the peak of summer, when the fireplace is dark and the air outside swelters, the patch of icy air lingers as though sealed into the very foundation of the hotel. Stories about the cold spot stretch back for generations. Old logbooks kept by staff mention complaints from guests who could not explain why their skin turned clammy near the hearth, or why their breaths misted in the air while flames roared inches away. One account from the 1930s described a group of hunters who warmed themselves after a long trek through the snow. One man stepped too close to the hearth and felt an icy hand grip his arm. He swore the air shimmered faintly, as though something unseen stood there beside him. His companions laughed at first, but when each one stepped forward, they too felt the cold wrap around them like a shroud. The hunters left the hotel the next morning, refusing to spend another night within its walls. Paranormal investigators have since flocked to the site, determined to measure and explain the anomaly. They bring infrared cameras, digital thermometers, and electromagnetic sensors, setting up equipment in front of the crackling fire. Again and again, the readings confirm what guests have always known. The temperature drops sharply in that one spot, plummeting far below the surrounding air. Some claim the readings sink into the impossible, colder than the instruments should even be able to register indoors. EMF meters spike wildly, as though the very air is charged with unseen energy. For many investigators, the cold spot is not just a curiosity, but a clue, evidence of a powerful spiritual presence bound to the hotel. Theories abound regarding its source. Some believe it is a portal, a thin place where the veil between worlds has worn away, allowing spirits to move freely in and out. Others suggest it is the lingering mark of a tragic death, a wound in the fabric of the building where energy has pooled unnaturally. One story ties it to a maid who once worked in the hotel, a woman who perished in a fire decades ago. Some claim her spirit clings to the hearth, forever caught between the warmth of flame and the bitterness of her end. Another tale whispers of a gambler who froze to death on the hotel's porch one winter's night after being locked out. His angry spirit, they say, now haunts the lobby, bringing the chill of that night with him. Guests who have lingered in the cold spot often report sensations that go beyond temperature. Some feel a crushing weight settle on their chest, as though the air itself has thickened. Others swear they hear faint whispers, drifting just beyond recognition, like conversations carried on a breeze that cannot be found. A few describe sudden emotions, an overwhelming sadness, a pang of dread, or a sense of being watched. On rare occasions, visitors claim to have seen fleeting shapes in the flicker of the firelight. A shadow leaning against a mantel, a pale figure moving across the hearth, or eyes glimmering in the darkness before vanishing without a trace. Staff, too, have their share of stories. One longtime employee recalled cleaning the lobby late one night, the fire reduced to glowing embers. As she passed near the hearth, she felt the cold so intensely it numbed her fingertips. She turned quickly, convinced someone had opened a door behind her, but the lobby was sealed tight. Then she heard a faint sigh, long and weary, drifting from the cold spot itself. Another employee admitted he avoids the fireplace altogether after once feeling an unseen tug on his sleeve, as though someone were trying to pull him closer to the icy air. The cold spot has become one of the hotel's most talked about mysteries. Visitors often test it for themselves, curious to feel what so many before them have described. Some laugh nervously and step away after only a moment, unwilling to linger. Others find themselves drawn to it, unable to resist returning again and again, as though something calls to them from beyond the chill. A few have even grown ill after standing in it too long, their bodies trembling with fever or weakness, despite the fire blazing just feet away. For skeptics, the cold spot is an unsolved puzzle of architecture and airflow. For believers, it is proof of the unseen. But for all who experience it, the sensation is undeniably icy wound in the warm heart of the hotel. It is a place where natural law bends, where fire cannot banish cold, and where something lingers that refuses to be explained. To this day, the cold spot remains, unchanging and immovable, waiting silently in the glow of the hearth. Visitors step into it, shiver at its bite, and step away again, whispering of the ghostly presence that seems to dwell there. And as the fire crackles and throws shadows across the stone, the icy chill reminds all who pass that in this hotel, the warmth of the living will always share space with the chill of the dead. Long after midnight, when the hotel lies draped in silence and the last echoes of conversation from the bar have faded, the halls sometimes filled with sounds that should not exist in the modern age. Guests lying in their rooms have reported being jolted awake by the sharp crack of gunfire, loud, abrupt, and unmistakable. It rattles the air like a thunderclap, followed by the echo of boots, stomping, and voices shouting in anger. Those who rise to investigate step into hallways that look empty, yet still seem to reverberate with the chaos of a moment torn out of history. This is the phenomenon guests and staff have come to call the gunslinger duel. The phantom gunfire is said to begin without warning. It might be one shot, ringing out so sharply that guests instinctively duck for cover. Other times, a whole volley follows, echoing as though pistols are being emptied in quick succession. Along with the shots, come the cries of men in heated argument, words too muddled to be understood clearly, but the tone unmistakable. Fury, desperation, the final curses of men, with nothing left but their trigger fingers. Many describe the voices as overlapping, shouting challenges back and forth, escalating until the inevitable gunfire drowns everything out. For some, the haunting becomes even more vivid. Guests have spoken of stepping into the hallway, only to glimpse fleeting figures at the far end, shadowy men facing each other. Guns raised, frozen in a tableau of violence. In the flicker of dim light, one figure sometimes collapses to the ground, clutching his chest before dissolving into nothing. The survivor lingers for only a moment before vanishing as well, leaving the hall empty and silent once more. Those who have witnessed it insist they did not dream. Their hearts pounded, their ears still rang, and the acrid smell of gunpowder seemed to cling to the air. The origin of this spectral duel has long been debated. Some point to the hotel's history during the Wild West era, when gunfights were not uncommon in towns where law was thin and tempers ran hot. Though official records are scarce, local lore tells of a violent altercation that took place within or near the hotel, a quarrel between two gamblers that spiraled into bloodshed. One man was said to have accused the other of cheating at cards, and pride demanded satisfaction. The duel erupted not in the street, as was tradition, but in the very halls of the establishment, turning the polished floors into a killing ground. The loser collapsed in a spray of blood, the winner fleeing into the night before justice could catch up. Whether this tale is true or merely embellished by generations of retelling, the sounds and visions persist. Paranormal investigators who have studied the site suggest the duel is a residual haunting, a moment of high emotion and violence replaying itself over and over, like a scar pressed into the fabric of the building. The sheer energy of rage, fear, and death may have burned itself into the walls, forcing the scene to repeat endlessly, triggered by the quiet hours of the night. Yet others argue the haunting is more intelligent. Some witnesses claim the figures react to them, locking eyes before fading, or pausing mid-duel, as though acknowledging their audience. One guest recounted standing frozen as a shadowy gunman turned his head toward her, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Before she could move, the shot rang out, and the figure fell to the ground at her feet before vanishing. She left the hotel the next morning, swearing never to return. Staff members have their own uneasy tales. A night clerk once confessed to hearing gunfire, so loud it rattled the glassware behind the bar. Convinced a robbery was in progress, he rushed into the hallway, only to find nothing but silence. His ears rang for several minutes afterward, as though the shots had been real. A housekeeper admitted she avoids the upper floors after dark, recalling the time she stepped out of a supply closet to find a shadowy man stumbling toward her, clutching his chest before crumpling to the floor and vanishing. She described the look of agony on his face as so real that she nearly screamed for help. Guests often leave shaken by the experience. One couple awoke to the sound of shouting outside their room. They hesitated before opening the door, but when they did, they found two hazy figures standing several yards apart, pistols drawn. The shots erupted so loudly that the husband slammed the door shut, his ears ringing. When they gathered the courage to look again, the hall was empty, though the faint smell of smoke still lingered. Another guest reported hearing a single shot, followed by a body collapsing against his door with a heavy thud. When he looked out, nothing remained, not even a mark on the floor. The phenomenon is not always confined to sound and sight. Some have reported sudden changes in temperature, the air dropping icy cold as the duel begins. Others claim their chests tighten painfully, as though sharing the fatal wound of the fallen gunman. A few even insist they have felt a spray of moisture across their face at the moment the shots ring out, like phantom blood that leaves no trace. These visceral details only heighten the terror for those who experience the duel firsthand. Theories about the meaning of the haunting vary. Some believe the duel is a punishment, the two men doomed to replay their moment of violence for eternity, never finding peace. Others see it as a warning, a reminder of the blood that was shed within the walls and the dangerous passions that once ruled the frontier. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest the duel may be one of the building's strongest imprints, a moment so intense it refuses to fade even after a century. To this day, guests who wake in the small hours sometimes lie frozen in their beds, listening as phantom boots stamp the floorboards and distant voices rise in anger. Then comes the inevitable crack of gunfire, shattering the silence of the modern world with echoes of the past. And always, when the echoes fade and the hallways fall silent again, there is nothing left to prove what has happened, nothing but the racing of a heart and the lingering smell of smoke. For those who hear the phantom shots in the night, it is a chilling reminder that the past never truly dies. It lingers, armed and unrelenting, in the shadows of the present. Long after the last diners have left and the restaurant lights dim to a soft glow, an eerie presence lingers among the tables and chairs. Staff working late at night, the few who clean, organize, and lock up the space, have long whispered of a phenomenon that defies explanation. The sound of a woman crying. It is a deep, heart-wrenching sob, sometimes soft and pitiful, sometimes raw and desperate, echoing from the restroom at the far end of the hall. The sound is unmistakable, a human grief that tugs at the heart, yet each time anyone investigates, the restroom is completely empty. The first reports came decades ago, when the restaurant was still run by its original owners. A young dishwasher staying late one winter night described hearing the soft sound of weeping, just as he finished stacking plates. At first he thought a customer had forgotten something, but as he approached the restroom, the crying grew louder, more desperate. Hesitating at the door, he knocked softly and called out, only to be met with silence. The sobs stopped abruptly, leaving him standing in a quiet hallway that seemed impossibly still after the sound of grief. Shaken, he left the restaurant as quickly as possible, leaving the lights on and refusing to return alone. Since then, many others have had similar encounters. Late-night servers, cooks, and cleaning staff all report hearing the crying, always coming from the same restroom, always at night. Some describe it as inconsolable sobs, the kind that make the walls themselves feel heavy. Others speak of quiet, almost whispered wails, as if someone were trying to cry without being heard. A few employees claim they have seen subtle movements, a flicker of shadow beneath the stall door, or a misty figure in the mirror, but when the light shines directly, nothing is there. The sound is not bound by the restaurant's logic. It travels through closed doors, sometimes even faintly across the dining room when other staff are far away. Some say it responds to the presence of living people, growing louder when someone approaches, then fading the moment they hesitate. The most unsettling accounts describe the sobs beginning the moment a staff member enters the restaurant alone, continuing relentlessly until they leave or call for another employee to come near. Paranormal investigators who have visited the site describe the crying as a phenomenon that suggests a lingering spirit, one bound to the location by trauma or unfinished business. Thermographic cameras and audio recorders often pick up anomalous subtle temperature drops in the restroom. Soft, breathy sounds layered over the crying, but no one has ever captured a clear image of the woman. EMF readings spike unpredictably, particularly near the mirror and stalls, further hinting at a presence that is both powerful and elusive. Some of the staff have tried to rationalize the sobs as stress or imagination, a byproduct of working late in a quiet, empty building. Yet the consistency of the reports, across decades and different employees, makes skepticism difficult. Multiple people have heard the crying simultaneously, each agreeing on its tone and source. One longtime manager admitted she had experienced it herself, describing the moment she opened the restroom door and the sound seemed to envelop her, only to vanish when she stepped inside. It's like walking into a room where someone was just there, she said, and yet nothing is ever there. Legends surrounding the crying woman vary, though most hint at tragedy. Some believe she was a former patron, a young bride or employee who suffered heartbreak or loss within the building. Others whisper that she was a worker who met a violent end in the restaurant many years ago, and whose spirit now mourns the life she never lived. One tale tells of a woman who once waited tables in the restaurant, a woman scorned by love or robbed of her future, whose despair became permanent, locked in the very place she once served. No evidence confirms any of these stories, but the sadness in the sobs is so palpable that many feel certain the cries are the echo of a human life interrupted. The crying has affected staff in ways beyond fear. Some have reported feelings of deep sorrow washing over them, as though the grief is infectious. Others experience sudden chills, racing hearts, or the sensation of being watched, especially when the sobs are particularly intense. A few have quit their jobs outright after repeated encounters, unable to endure the emotional weight of the unseen woman's presence. Those who stay often warn newcomers, never investigate alone, never linger near the restroom at night, and always keep the lights on. Guests, too, have sometimes become aware of the phenomenon, a late-night diner, returning to the restroom alone. Once reported pausing mid-step when she heard the unmistakable sound of weeping from the stall next to hers. She called out softly, thinking a stranger had been trapped, but the sound only intensified before fading entirely. Shaken, she left immediately, vowing never to use that restroom again. Another visitor swore she saw a pale face reflected in the mirror as she washed her hands, only for it to vanish when she turned. Despite the fear and unease it brings, the crying has become part of the restaurant's lore. Staff recount their encounters to each other quietly, swapping stories of chilling nights and unexplained sobs, each tale adding layers to the legend of the crying woman. Some approach it with reverence, treating it as a reminder of the lives and emotions that linger in old spaces. Others treat it with wariness, carefully avoiding the restroom late at night and warning anyone who will listen of what might await them behind the door. The sobbing continues, night after night, year after year, always in the same place, always impossibly real. It pierces the silence like a warning or a plea, impossible to ignore for those who work long after the doors close. And while no one has ever seen the woman who cries, everyone who hears her knows she is there, a presence of grief, lingering between the walls, reminding the living that some sorrow never fades. In the quiet hours, when the restaurant is empty and the only sound is the faint hum of refrigeration, the crying begins again. It seeps out from the restroom, winding its way through the dimly lit hallways, carrying with it a sorrow that no fire, no conversation, no modern comfort can chase away. And those who hear it, whether staff or guest, understand immediately that this is not a trick of the mind. Somewhere in the shadows of the restaurant, the crying woman waits, bound to the space, her grief echoing for anyone brave enough, for unlucky enough, to listen. In the quiet hours of the evening, when the restaurant has mostly emptied and the clinking of silverware has faded into memory, a strange and unsettling phenomenon begins to manifest. Guests and staff alike have reported witnessing what has come to be known as the disappearing dinner. Plates of food, carefully arranged moments before by attentive servers, have been found inexplicably moved, altered, or even vanished entirely, leaving empty tables where a meal should have been. The incidents are not limited to one area of the restaurant. They have occurred at tables, near the windows, in the center of the dining room, and even in private booths, always under circumstances that defy logic. The earliest accounts date back decades. A traveling businessman, dining alone late one evening, left his table briefly to retrieve a glass of water. Upon returning, he was startled to find his plate rearranged, as though someone had eaten half of the meal. Confused and embarrassed, he looked around, expecting a mischievous child or inattentive server, but the restaurant was nearly empty. The food was untouched but repositioned with meticulous care, and the napkin he had folded into a triangle was now perfectly aligned at the top of the plate. When he called for a waiter, the staff found nothing unusual and insisted that no one had approached his table. Shaken, the man left soon afterward, vowing never to return late at night. Since then, reports of disappearing dinners have multiplied. Servers cleaning up after dinner service often speak of trays of uneaten food found missing entirely from tables, or sometimes appearing in new locations as though someone had been moving them while no one watched. Desserts left to cool have been consumed or rearranged in ways that make no sense. A slice of cake may be missing entirely, leaving only the crumbs behind. A bowl of soup might be untouched but pushed to the edge of the table, accompanied by a clean spoon that no one remembers setting down. Guests who return later to retrieve a forgotten plate are often met with a table that looks untouched, though the smell of recently eaten food lingers in the air. One night, a pair of friends stayed past the usual dinner hour, finishing their meals in quiet conversation. When they stepped away to use the restroom, they returned to find their table completely altered. Plates were stacked in unusual ways, silverware arranged symmetrically, and napkins folded with precision. Their wine glasses had been moved closer together, and the crumbs from their bread had vanished entirely. Puzzled, they asked the staff if anyone had come by, but the waiters insisted they had not touched the table. The friends sat back down, hesitant, only to find the centerpiece a small vase with flowers slightly tilted as though someone invisible had adjusted it. The atmosphere grew unnerving, as if the table itself were being tended by unseen diners who preferred to remain unseen. Paranormal investigators have taken a keen interest in the restaurant. Many describe the phenomenon as a classic residual haunting, where the energy of past diners is replayed endlessly, manifesting in the rearrangement of plates and silverware. Some speculate that the spirits are replicating rituals of dining, the act of eating and arranging food imprinted on the space through repeated activity over decades. Thermal cameras occasionally pick up unexplained movements, and audio devices sometimes record soft clinks of forks and knives that cannot be traced to a physical presence. The evidence, while subtle, is consistent enough to attract investigators from across the country. Staff members have learned to navigate the restaurant with caution, particularly during the late hours. Many insist on working in pairs to avoid being alone when the phenomenon occurs. One server recounted carrying a tray of dishes to the back kitchen, only to return seconds later to find the plates rearranged on the table she had just cleared. Another described hearing the faint sound of someone eating, the soft scrape of utensils on china, only to find no one at the table. These incidents have left employees wary, even after decades of working in the space. Guests sometimes feel the presence of invisible diners as well. A couple staying for a special anniversary noted that when they left their plates momentarily, the food seemed to vanish from sight, only to reappear perfectly positioned when they returned. Others have claimed to hear faint laughter, the shuffle of chairs, or the murmur of conversation in the empty dining room, reinforcing the unsettling sense that the restaurant is never truly unoccupied. Some have speculated that the spirits are reliving their last meals, forever bound to the act of dining, replaying rituals of human satisfaction that they cannot abandon. The disappearing dinner phenomenon is not always confined to ordinary food. Fine china, glassware, and silverware have all been mysteriously altered in placement. A dessert tray might appear inches closer to the edge of a table, a bread basket rotated 90 degrees, or a wine bottle uncorked and replaced in the same position. Staff have taken to documenting these changes, yet patterns remain elusive. No one has been able to predict when it will occur, which table will be affected, or what items will be moved. The uncertainty adds to the unease and keeps both guests and employees vigilant. Legends surrounding the phenomenon often mention specific patrons from decades past, those who frequented the restaurant and enjoyed long, leisurely dinners. Some suggest that these past diners linger still, replaying their final meals in a loop of ethereal satisfaction. Others believe the restaurant itself has absorbed the energy of countless meals, imbuing the dining experience with residual consciousness that occasionally asserts itself in the physical world. Whatever the explanation, those who witness the disappearing dinner are left with a vivid, haunting impression of invisible diners sharing a meal with the living. The phenomenon continues to this day, and late-night diners often whisper to each other about the possibilities. Some brave souls try to leave food behind deliberately, curious to see if it will vanish or be rearranged. Others avoid dining alone, unwilling to test the patience or whims of the unseen guests. For those who work in the restaurant, it is an accepted part of the Joban invisible presence that reminds them that the space is never truly empty and that the echoes of past meals may continue long after the plates are cleared. And so, when the evening falls, and the restaurant grows silent, except for the gentle hum of refrigeration and distant traffic, the tables remain ready. Plates are set, silverware aligned, and napkins folded. Staff and guests alike know that the next meal may not stay as they left it, for somewhere among the polished wood and flickering lights, unseen diners continue to feast, their presence marked only by the subtle disappearance or rearrangement of what was once tangible. The disappearing dinner serves as a quiet, unsettling reminder that in this restaurant, the past and present coexist, sharing meals in ways both visible and invisible. On quiet nights, when the streets surrounding the hotel lie empty, and the only sounds are the whisper of the wind and the occasional distant bark of a dog, an eerie phenomenon has long captured the imagination of locals and guests alike. Visitors often report hearing the unmistakable rumble of a stagecoach approaching, heavy wheels clattering over cobblestones, the rhythmic pounding of hooves, and the metallic jingle of harnesses. The sounds are vivid and detailed, so realistic that anyone standing near the front entrance might expect to see a coach and horses appear in the lantern light. Yet, when the source of the commotion is sought, there is nothing, no carriage, no horses, and no driver waiting to disembark. This is the mysterious occurrence known as the phantoms. The earliest reports trace back over a century to a time when stagecoaches were a common sight in front of the hotel, bringing travelers from distant towns and remote farms. According to local lore, the hotel once served as a key stop on a well-traveled route, a place where weary passengers could rest and enjoy a warm meal. But with the advent of automobiles and modern roads, the stagecoach era faded into history. Still, the sounds of that time seem to echo through the present, as though the clamor of travel cannot be silenced. Many guests describe the experience with the same striking detail. It begins subtly, with a faint thudding on the road outside, like hooves striking stone. Within moments, the sound grows louder, accompanied by the creak of wooden wheels and the rattle of iron fittings. The stagecoach seems to pull up right to the hotel doors, the driver shouting indistinct commands to his horses, and the animals' hooves drum across the pavement in a steady, urgent rhythm. Guests who have experienced it swear the sounds are so vivid that they can almost feel the vibrations underfoot, as if a heavy carriage were indeed arriving. Curiosity often drives the braver, the skeptical, to step outside and investigate. Many have recounted rushing to the hotel entrance, eyes scanning the darkness for the telltale glimmer of lanterns or the polished wood of a coach. Yet, time and again, nothing is found. The road is empty. The only movement, the swaying branches of trees in the wind. Even the ground shows no sign of hoofprints or wheel marks. The phantom stagecoach exists only as sound, an auditory echo that vanishes the moment one seeks physical confirmation. The phenomenon is not limited to a single era of witness. Staff working night shifts report hearing the stagecoach long after the restaurant has closed and the last guests have retired. One longtime night clerk described standing at the front desk when the first faint thuds reached his ears. Within moments, the entire hotel seemed alive with the sound of approaching travel, the wheels, the horses, the calls of the driver. He stepped outside, expecting a visitor from a distant town, but found only the empty road stretching into darkness. Another staff member admitted that, on some nights, the stagecoach sound would circle the building, growing louder and then fading as though the vehicle were moving away. Yet no tracks remained to suggest movement. Locals often share their own tales. Some claim the sounds are linked to a specific stagecoach line that vanished in a storm decades ago, with passengers and driver lost to history. Others suggest that the hotel, situated on a well-traveled old route, has absorbed the energy of countless arrivals and departures, replaying those moments in a persistent echo. Paranormal investigators who have examined the site have noted unusual spikes in electromagnetic readings outside the entrance during the hours when the sounds are reported. Some even caught faint images of light and shadow on night vision cameras that hint at movement, though nothing concrete ever appears. The phantom stagecoach is often accompanied by other subtle phenomena. Witnesses describe chills in the air as the sound approaches, even on warm summer nights. A distant smell of horse sweat and leather sometimes lingers for a moment, only to vanish as the auditory illusion disappears. Occasionally, faint lantern light seems to flicker in the darkness, the glow hinting at a driver poised to climb down from the coach, yet no figure is ever seen. These sensory details add to the conviction of those who experience the phenomenon. It is real, in a way that cannot be explained by wind or imagination alone. Some guests are drawn to the experience, eager to witness it, while others avoid the front doors entirely after nightfall. A few daring individuals have reported standing on the road, attempting to see the phantom arrive, but each time, the sounds vanish the instant they take a step forward. Many leave unsettled, a mixture of fascination and unease tugging at them, knowing that something lingers just beyond their reach. Legends surrounding the phantom stagecoach often include tales of urgency, and unfinished business. Some claim that long ago, a stagecoach driver was rushing to deliver critical messages or transport a sick passenger when he vanished without a trace near the hotel. Others whisper that restless travelers who once passed through the town linger still, compelled to return, replaying the journey that fate denied them. Whether these stories hold truth is impossible to verify, yet the tales themselves have become part of the hotel's enduring lore, passed along quietly to newcomers and thrill-seeking guests. Despite the mystery, the phenomenon continues into the present day. Night after night, the distant thundering of hooves and the creak of wooden wheels can be heard, sometimes faint and fleeting, sometimes loud enough to make the building tremble slightly. Guests peer through the windows, some stepping outside, only to confront the stillness of the empty road. The paradox of hearing without seeing, of presence without form, creates an unnerving tension that hangs over the hotel like a shadow. The phantom stagecoach remains a source of fascination and unease, a reminder that history, memory, and energy can linger long after the events themselves have passed. For those who hear it, the sound evokes both wonder and dread, the feeling of being transported into another era, of stepping into a time when travel was slow, uncertain, and filled with the promise of adventure or danger. It is a haunting that cannot be touched, but it can be felt, in the vibrations underfoot, the chill in the air, and the unmistakable echo of hooves on the old cobblestone. And so, in the darkness outside the hotel, the stagecoach continues its endless journey. Guests and staff hear it arrive, the horses clattering and the wheels rattling, but no carriage ever appears. The road remains empty, the night still, yet the phantom echoes persist, a living memory of travel long past, eternally replayed for anyone who dares to listen. Late at night, when the hotel lounge is quiet and the clinking of glasses has faded, some guests have reported encountering a man unlike any other. He appears at the far end of the bar, seated on a polished stool, impeccably dressed, with a warm smile and an easy manner. He greets patrons with friendliness, strikes up conversation, and seems genuinely interested in whoever he speaks to. The stranger talks about travel, history, local landmarks, or trivial observations, always listening as much as he speaks, making his presence feel natural and comforting. Guests often find themselves laughing or nodding along, drawn into a conversation that feels familiar, yet strangely out of place in the hushed late-night atmosphere. The phenomenon is unsettling because the stranger is not always seen by everyone. Some witnesses report sitting alone at the bar, yet hearing another voice replying to them, engaging in conversation, asking questions, and offering advice, only to glance around and find that no one else is present. The stranger's presence is tangible. His gestures, the movement of a hand, the shift of a stool as he leans in to speak, and even the subtle scent of his cologne. Guests remark on the realism of the experience, the warmth of his attention, and the charm of his company. Many of these encounters end suddenly. The conversation continues naturally, with no warning or indication of anything unusual, until a guest looks away for a moment, perhaps to pour a drink, answer a phone call, or glance at a menu. When they turn back, the stranger is gone. His stool is empty, the space undisturbed, as if no one had ever been there. Some guests check with the bartender or nearby patrons, only to be told that no one else is at the bar. The sudden disappearance leaves a lingering sense of unease, a quiet shiver, and the nagging question of who or what they had been speaking with. Longtime staff have heard countless reports of the stranger, and while they rarely speak of him openly, they acknowledge the occurrences. Bartenders recount nights when guests showed them photographs or recounted conversations with a man who simply wasn't there. Waitstaff describe witnessing patrons laughing and chatting with someone invisible, gestures made in midair that seem natural yet impossible. Housekeepers have noticed glasses set on the bar, as if used, then returned to perfect alignment, though no one was present. Those who work late often treat the phenomenon with quiet acceptance, moving carefully and respectfully in areas where the stranger has been reported. Guests who encounter the stranger often feel a mix of emotions. Some leave with a sense of comfort, as though the conversation offered an unexpected connection or insight. Others are unsettled, haunted by the memory of a presence that was entirely real yet impossible to identify or locate. Many recalled details vividly: the tone of his voice, the sparkle in his eyes, the slight tilt of his head, but these memories are coupled with the frustrating impossibility of proving he existed at all. The stranger's appearances are not always predictable. He can arrive at any hour, often when the bar is nearly empty, and the quiet of the night amplifies the sense of intimacy. Some visitors report that he seems drawn to those who are alone, offering companionship in a way that is gentle and patient, yet impossible to pin down. Others describe encounters during social gatherings, when he interacts with one patron and disappears before anyone else can notice. The consistency of these experiences over decades suggests a pattern, but the exact nature of the phenomenon remains a mystery. Paranormal investigators have taken an interest in the reports, documenting accounts and attempting to capture evidence. Audio recordings sometimes pick up faint voices or snippets of conversation, yet playback often reveals distortion, interruptions, or missing words. Cameras may capture subtle shifts or shadows in the space where the stranger was seen, but nothing concrete ever appears. Some theorists propose that he is a residual presence, a memory imprinted on the bar from a man who once frequented the hotel, endlessly replaying the act of social engagement. Others suggest he may be an intelligent entity, aware of visitors and capable of interacting before vanishing without trace. Despite the mystery, the stranger has become a part of the hotel's lore. Patrons speak of him in hushed tones, sharing stories of late-night encounters with fellow guests, exchanging theories and impressions. The phenomenon continues to intrigue, unnerve, and fascinate, a reminder that not all presences are visible, and that some interactions are fleeting but unforgettable. And so, when the lounge grows quiet and only a few guests linger, someone may notice a man at the end of the bar, friendly, attentive, and impossibly real. He engages in conversation, shares stories, laughs, and listens. Yet, just as suddenly as he appears, he vanishes. No stool disturbed, no glass left behind, and no witness able to account for his arrival or departure. The memory of the encounter lingers, leaving a mixture of wonder and unease, and the quiet knowledge that somewhere in the hotel, the stranger at the bar continues his endless rounds, appearing to those who least expect him and disappearing before anyone can truly understand. On the upper floors of the hotel, where the hallways narrow and the hum of the city below is muted to a distant murmur, a quiet and unsettling phenomenon has long captured the attention of both guests and staff. It is known simply as the curtain rustle. Visitors staying late in their rooms, or those walking the corridors during the quiet hours of night, have repeatedly reported curtains moving as though an unseen presence lingers just behind them. The movement is subtle, at first a gentle flick, a swaying that seems impossible without a draft, but it quickly grows unnerving when no windows are open and no air vents could account for the motion. The earliest accounts of the phenomenon stretch back decades, when the hotel's upper floors were newly built and rooms were still freshly furnished. Guests often reported being awakened in the dead of night by a soft swish of fabric brushing against a wall. Some initially dismissed it as a trick of the wind or a reaction to temperature changes, but the incidents soon proved more persistent than any passing breeze. Curtains would shift while rooms were sealed tight, and the subtle sound of movement would linger even after the window remained firmly closed. Those who have experienced it describe an odd rhythm to the rustling. It is not random like a breeze or a failing rod. There is a deliberate quality to it, as if someone or something were pacing behind the curtains. Some guests have risen to investigate, only to find the room completely empty. The curtains fall still when approached, but the sensation of being observed remains, like eyes peering through the fabric from the other side. The chill that often accompanies the rustle adds to the sense of unease, leaving visitors with goosebumps and a heightened awareness of the silence around them. One guest recounted staying in a room on the top floor. During a stormy night, as thunder rolled across the sky, he noticed the curtains near the window beginning to flutter. Even though the rain was lashing against the glass and the window was tightly closed, at first, he assumed the storm's vibrations caused the motion. but the movement persisted, independent of the weather. Heart racing, he approached the window, only to find no one behind the drapes. The curtains seemed almost to recoil from his presence, then continued their slow, deliberate swaying. Once he stepped back, he described the sensation as though an invisible figure were testing the boundaries of its unseen prison. Aware of his gaze, but remaining just out of reach, staff members are no strangers to the curtain rustle either. Housekeepers working late shifts have reported entering rooms to tidy them only to pause at the sound of fabric brushing against itself. One described replacing folded towels and turning toward a rustling curtain, seeing the fabric shift without any visible cause. She froze, unsure if she had imagined it, but the feeling of another presence pressing close was undeniable. Others have admitted to avoiding certain rooms late at night, fearing that the restless movement behind the curtains would intensify if they lingered too long. Theories about the origin of the rustling abound. Some suggest it is a residual haunting, the echo of someone who once lived or died in the room. Repeating gestures so faint that only the curtains betray their presence. Others speculate that the upper floors, having been renovated multiple times over the decades, may hold traces of intense emotional energy that manifest in subtle movements of fabric. A few of the more chilling stories claim that a former guest or employee, perhaps someone who met a tragic end within the walls, continues to linger, watching the comings and goings of those who occupy the space. Many of the accounts share common details that suggest more than imagination. Guests frequently report a tingling sensation along the spine when the rustle occurs, an almost imperceptible pressure in the air near the window. Some describe hearing faint whispers, words that dissolve before they can be understood, as if the unseen presence is trying to communicate or warn. In certain rooms, observers have noticed shadows forming behind the fabric, shifting in ways that seem almost human, before vanishing when the light strikes directly. One notable account involves a couple staying on the top floor. As they prepared for bed, the curtains in their room began to stir. They initially laughed, thinking it must be a draft from the air vent, but the movement quickly became deliberate, almost rhythmic. They approached the window together, and as they did, the rustling intensified, as though the figure behind the curtains were aware of their approach. The couple retreated, terrified, and the sound ceased as abruptly as it began. Even after leaving the room, they described feeling watched for the remainder of their stay, the impression of unseen eyes following them down the hallway. Paranormal investigators who have visited the hotel have documented the curtain rustle with varying results. Audio recordings capture faint swishes of fabric that cannot be attributed to wind or mechanical systems. Thermal cameras sometimes show subtle heat signatures behind the drapes, appearing and disappearing in ways that defy explanation. Electromagnetic readings fluctuate sporadically, adding to the sense that an unseen presence may occupy the space. Yet, no one has ever captured a clear image of a person behind the curtains, leaving the phenomenon frustratingly elusive. The curtain rustle, while subtle compared to other hauntings, is particularly unnerving because of its intimacy. Unlike the more overt manifestations of ghostly activity, loud bangs, apparitions, or moving objects, the rustle is quiet, personal, and persistent. It forces those who experience it to confront the possibility that someone unseen occupies the same space, sharing the room, listening, and observing without revealing themselves. The uncertainty amplifies fear, making the experience linger in the memory long after the visitor leaves. Guests who have experienced the rustling often speak of the sensation with a mix of fear and fascination. Some are drawn to it, returning to the room deliberately to see if the phenomenon will recur. Others avoid certain upper-floor rooms altogether, unwilling to risk encountering the restless presence again. Staff continue their work with caution, many of them carrying flashlights and moving quickly past the windows, wary of drawing attention from whatever may linger just behind the curtains. To this day, the curtains on the upper floors continue to move on their own. They sway gently in the night, responding to no wind, no ventilation, and no visible hand. Those who witness the rustling are left with an undeniable impression that someone or something is behind the fabric, watching, waiting, and refusing to be seen. The phenomenon is subtle, yet its persistence makes it impossible to ignore. In this quiet, shadowed part of the hotel, the curtain rustle serves as a reminder that some presences are content to remain hidden, their existence known only through the faint whisper of fabric and the uneasy awareness of the living. Visitors to the hotel often come armed with cameras, hoping to capture memories of their stay among its grand halls, ornate furnishings, and historic architecture. Yet, for decades, a strange and unsettling phenomenon has plagued those who attempt to photograph the interior. The eerie photographs. Tourists and guests alike report discovering figures in their images that they did not see when the picture was taken. Blurred faces, shadowy silhouettes, or pale ghostly orbs hovering unnaturally in the frame. The images leave a lasting impression, prompting fear, curiosity, and countless unanswered questions. The phenomenon often begins innocently. Guests snap photos of the lobby's intricate chandeliers, the sweeping staircases, or the richly decorated dining room. At the time, the halls appear empty, quiet except for the faint footsteps of other visitors, or the soft creak of floorboards under their own shoes. Yet when the photos are later reviewed, a strange figure often appears in the background. A translucent shape, a vague shadow, or the indistinct form of a person who was never visible with the naked eye. Many who first notice these anomalies feel a chill run down their spine, as if the camera has captured something that exists just beyond normal perception. One of the most frequently reported occurrences involves blurred faces appearing in portraits. Tourists describe standing for a photo, smiling at the camera, only to discover a ghostly face hovering near the edge of the frame. Sometimes it is just a shadow, with no discernible features, but in other images, faint eyes and a pale outline of a mouth are visible. These faces often appear to be watching, their expressions mournful or blank, creating an unsettling feeling that the hotel is inhabited by invisible witnesses. Guests who show these photos to staff are often met with quiet nods and knowing looks. As though these occurrences are far from unusual, shadowy silhouettes are another common feature in the eerie photographs. Sometimes they are full-body outlines, faint and transparent, standing near staircases, doorways, or windows. Other times, they appear in motion, stretched or distorted as though moving at impossible speeds. A visitor snapping a photo of the grand ballroom might later find a dark, vaguely humanoid shape hovering near the center of the room, its head slightly tilted as though observing the photographer. These shadows cannot be attributed to reflections, lighting, or other visual tricks. They appear in places where no one is present and often defy logic, seemingly aware of the camera's gaze. Orbs are perhaps the most mysterious manifestation. Small, glowing spheres sometimes hover in the corner of a photograph, floating above furniture or along hallways. They range in color from bright white to faintly yellow or bluish, and occasionally appear in clusters. While some skeptics dismiss orbs as dust, insects, or lens flare, many guests insist that these lights behave differently than ordinary particles. They move in unnatural ways, appearing in the same location in multiple photographs taken moments apart, or seeming to drift toward the photographer in a slow, deliberate manner. For many, the presence of these orbs evokes an undeniable sense of being watched or followed. The phenomenon is not limited to professional cameras. It also affects smartphones, tablets, and other digital devices. Guests who take casual snapshots of the lobby, hallways, or staircases often discover anomalies only after uploading the images to a computer or reviewing them on a larger screen. These unexpected discoveries often leave visitors feeling uneasy, questioning their own senses and the nature of reality within the hotel. Staff members are familiar with the eerie photographs, though they rarely discuss them openly with guests. Many longtime employees have stories of tourists returning to show them pictures containing unexpected figures. A night clerk once recounted a guest who presented a photo of the lobby chandelier, only to find a faint, ghostly figure seated beneath it, its face turned toward the camera. The staff member explained that such occurrences are common, though the presence of the figure is never predictable. Housekeepers, to have shared experiences of seeing vague shapes or shadows in their photographs, reinforcing the idea that these manifestations are tied to the building itself rather than any individual guest. Paranormal investigators have studied the phenomenon extensively. They suggest that the hotel's long history, filled with countless lives, emotions, and events, may have left residual energy within its walls. Cameras, they argue, sometimes capture this energy, translating it into visual anomalies on digital sensors or film. Some investigators propose that these are not mere echoes, but intelligent presences, aware of the act of being photographed and responding in ways that are visible yet imperceptible to the human eye. Despite numerous studies, no definitive explanation has emerged, and the photographs remain as enigmatic as ever. The eerie photographs have had a profound impact on those who experience them. Some guests return home fascinated, compiling albums of strange and unexplained images. Others are frightened, feeling that the figures in their photos are observing them, following them, or even attempting to communicate. In extreme cases, people report feeling anxious or watched long after leaving the hotel, haunted by the knowledge that their camera has captured something real, yet invisible. The phenomenon continues to this day. Tourists armed with cameras capture images of empty hallways, ornately decorated rooms, and sunlit lobbies, only to discover afterward that something or someone has appeared where none should be. Blurred faces, shadowy silhouettes, and glowing orbs populate their photographs, offering a fleeting glimpse into a world that coexists alongside the visible, tangible hotel. For those who experience it, the eerie photographs serve as both warning and invitation, a reminder that the hotel holds more than its walls and furnishings, that unseen presences linger in the corners and shadows. And as long as visitors continue to snap photos, the hotel will continue to share its secrets, one mysterious image at a time. In the quietest hours of the night, when the hotel is cloaked in darkness and the surrounding streets are empty, a sound occasionally pierces the stillness, a sound both eerie and impossible. Guests and staff alike have reported hearing the unmistakable cry of a train conductor calling, "All aboard." The voice echoes through the corridors, distant yet clear, carrying with it the rhythmic rumble of wheels on steel tracks and the faint hiss of steam. It is a sound that evokes motion, urgency, and anticipation. Yet, when anyone ventures outside or to the hotel's grounds, there is no train to be found, no tracks leading to arrival or departure. This chilling phenomenon has come to be known as the last train call. The earliest accounts date back many decades, to a time when the railway line near the hotel was active. The hotel itself served as a stopover for travelers arriving by train from distant towns. Guests would check in for the night, weary from their journey, while others awaited the next morning's train to continue their travels. The rhythm of arrivals and departures became a familiar background to the life of the hotel. But when the railway line was decommissioned and the tracks abandoned, the echoes of those journeys refused to fade. Some believe that the conductor's call is the lingering voice of a past era, replaying the anticipation and bustle of travel for anyone still present to hear. Visitors describe the sound as startlingly vivid. It begins as a distant, almost imperceptible whistle or bark, growing steadily into a clear command, "All aboard." Along with it comes the unmistakable rhythm of a train approaching, the low resonant thrum of wheels over rails, the gentle creak of iron tracks, and the hiss of steam, as though the engine itself is slowing in preparation to stop at the platform. The effect is so immersive that many initially believe a train is arriving, only to be confronted by silence and the absence of tracks or locomotives. One of the most chilling accounts involves a night clerk who had been closing the hotel's main entrance after a late arrival. As he stepped outside, the familiar stillness of the night was suddenly shattered by the conductor's call, "All aboard." The words were unmistakable, commanding attention, yet the area around him was empty. The clerk described hearing the wheels rolling along a path that no longer existed, the faint squeal of brakes, and the rush of air, as though the train had just passed. He waited, staring down the darkened grounds, but no train ever came, leaving only the echo of that last call, lingering in the air. Guests in upper rooms have experienced the phenomenon as well. Some describe hearing the conductor's voice through closed windows, accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of rails that seems to pass directly beneath them. The sound often fades as quickly as it begins, leaving a ringing silence and a sense of unresolved expectation. A few guests have reported feeling sudden chills, as though the cold air of a railway platform had somehow found its way inside the room. The effect is disorienting, blending nostalgia, fear, and wonder into a single moment that lingers long after the sound has faded. Paranormal investigators have studied the last train call extensively. Audio recordings capture the call of the conductor and the clatter of wheels. Yet playback often reveals strange distortions, voices layered beneath the whistle, faint murmurs of passengers, or an indistinct hum that seems to emanate from nowhere. Thermal cameras sometimes detect moving heat signatures near the hotel grounds during these events, yet no physical train is present. Investigators suggest the phenomenon may be a residual haunting, the echo of travelers and their anticipation imprinted on the space, endlessly replaying the moment when a train was expected but never arrived. The phenomenon is not always frightening, though it often carries an undertone of melancholy. Some guests describe a sense of longing or nostalgia, as if the call carries with it the hopes and dreams of those who once awaited the train. Others report a more visceral sense of fear, particularly when the voice is accompanied by shadows that seem to pass along the walls, or the faint image of a train car flickering at the edge of vision. Many agree on the emotional impact. It is impossible to ignore, impossible to dismiss as simple imagination, and impossible to reconcile with the physical world. Staff members have adapted to the strange occurrence, learning to treat it with quiet respect. Nighttime employees report hearing the call in various areas around the hotel, the lobby, the upper floors, even the rear garden where the old tracks once lay. Some describe pausing mid-task, listening as the conductor's voice grows clear, then receding, leaving an eerie stillness that lingers for several minutes. Long-term employees often swap stories quietly, recounting the experiences of guests and themselves, each tale adding weight to the legend of the last train call. Tourists who encounter the phenomenon are often struck by its realism. Many feel compelled to investigate, stepping out into the empty grounds or leaning from upper-floor windows to search for the source. Invariably, the call fades before they reach any definitive point, leaving only silence and the faint echo in memory. Some are exhilarated, others unnerved, but nearly all are left with a lingering sense of presence, an invisible traveler waiting to depart, a train forever arriving yet never arriving, and a conductor calling for passengers who cannot answer. Over the years, theories about the origin of the sound have proliferated. Some say it is the imprint of long-deceased travelers, eternally awaiting a train that no longer exists. Others suggest that the hotel itself has absorbed the energy of countless departures, embedding them into the very walls and grounds. A few believe the call to be a warning or invitation, a reminder of unfinished journeys, lost opportunities, or the persistence of time in a place where past and present collide. The last train call continues to echo through the hotel, a chilling and unforgettable experience for anyone who hears it. Guests pause in the hallways, staff stop mid-task, and visitors on the grounds feel the vibrations of a journey that exists only in sound. It is a haunting that bridges history and memory, a reminder that some echoes are too strong to fade, and that the call of the conductor, sharp and commanding, may continue indefinitely, summoning travelers to a departure that will never come. And so, in the darkness of night, when the world outside is silent and still, the call rises again. All aboard! It cries, echoing along the abandoned tracks, reverberating through the corridors, and across the empty rooms of the hotel. The sound is real, vivid, and impossible to locate, leaving anyone who hears it with a shiver and the inescapable certainty that somewhere, just beyond perception, travelers continue to wait, and the last train will forever be just out of reach. And so, dear friends, we leave the Irma Hotel behind for now. Within its walls, Buffalo Bill's legacy endures, woven together with the lingering whispers of the past. Whether you believe these tales or not, The countless guests and staff who have felt a hand on their shoulder, heard voices in the dark, or seen shadows move where no one should stand, will tell you otherwise. The Irma is not just a hotel, it is a living monument to history, a place where the Wild West still breathes, and where the line between this world and the next remains dangerously thin. If you ever find yourself in Cody, Wyoming, dare to spend a night at the Irma. Who knows? You may just share a drink with a stranger at the bar, only to discover he's been dead for over a century. Thank you for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the haunted heart of the Irma Hotel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with those who love the strange and the ghostly. Until next time, my friends, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, the past is never truly gone. It lingers, waiting for you, in places just like this.